Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting of the Board of Chiropractic Examiners is being held by teleconference. The date is Thursday, July 20th, 2023, and the time is 9:01 a.m. The board's paramount responsibility is to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the public through licensure, education, engagement, and enforcement in chiropractic care. Members of the public may address the board during the public comment session. Public comments will also be taken on agenda items at the time the item is heard and prior to the board taking any action on said items. Those who would like to provide public comment will be limited to 3 minutes unless in the discretion of the board circumstances require a longer period. Members of the public will not be permitted to yield their allotted time to other members of the public to make comments. Individuals may appear before the board to discuss items not on today's agenda. However, the board may not discuss or take action on these items except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Please turn off or silence all cell phones, and we will now take the roll call. Mr. Sweet, would you please take the roll?
Yes, good morning. Dr. Paris.
Present.
Dr. Adams.
Present.
Raphael Sweet is present. Ms. Cruz.
Present.
And Dr. Daniels.
Present.
And Dr. Sandino.
Present.
This is Sabina. Can I interrupt? And can we do that one more time with confirmation of addresses?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Paris, can you confirm your address?
Present at BCE office location, Sacramento, California.
And Dr. Adams.
I am present at 101 Andrick Street, Sonoma, California, 95476.
And Raphael Sweet, I'm at 4100 West Alameda Avenue, 3rd floor, Burbank, California, 91505. Ms. Cruz.
BC offices, 1625 North Market Street, 2nd floor, El Dorado Room, Sacramento, California.
And Dr. Daniels.
1165 Park Avenue, San Jose, California, 95126.
And Dr. Sandino.
6955 Lake Nona Boulevard, Orlando, Florida, and I'm in the conference room.
This is Sabina. One more time, as if anybody could indicate also if they have any public present.
Okay, so we'll go back through and take roll and have them recite the address again.
No, I just need to know if there's any members of the public present at any of the locations, teleconference
Understood.
locations.
Dr. Paris.
No members of the public present.
Dr. Adams.
No members of the public are present.
Mr. Sweet, no members of the public are present. Well, Ms. Cruz.
The members of the public are present.
And Dr. Daniels.
No members of the public are present.
And Dr. Sandino.
No members of the public are present.
Okay,
How was that, Ms. Knight?
thank you. Ms. Knight, is that sufficient?
It's perfect. Thank you so much. And if you would be so kind as to update us later if anybody does show up. That way we can keep our minutes a little cleaner. Thank you.
And this is the
Understood.
moderator.
Thank
When we do call for public comments, I will probably call out each city just to make sure no one has arrived late to their location. So please be patient as I do that for each public comment session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Knight. Thank you, Mr. Sweet. We have a quorum. Moving to agenda item number 2. Public comment for items not on the agenda. And before we open it for public comment, I'd like to inform members of the public that they may address the committee at this time. And please be advised that identifying themselves as voluntary and their name will be recorded in the official minutes of the meeting if it is provided at the time of their comment. And moderator, can we please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly. So at our Sacramento location, do we still have no members of the public?
No members of the public.
Thank you very much. And then let's step through the other in-person locations in Burbank. Do we have any public members?
We do not.
Thank you. In Sonoma, do we have any public members?
No.
Thank you. In San Jose, do we have any public members?
No.
Thank you. And in Orlando, do we have any public members?
No.
Perfect. So now we are opening up the opportunity to comment for people logged in on WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen, or behind the 3-dot other options. If you are on a mobile device, you can click the question mark, type the word comment in that text box, and click send. Anyone may also raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. And our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. So we do have a couple of requests for comment. Let me go ahead and our first is from call-in user 3, and I'm going to send you a request to unmute. You can press *6 to unmute yourself. You're unmuted.
Hello, this is Falcon Lamont, student intern from Life Chiropractic College Life. I would like to request that the board ask the licensing committee to have prepared for the next full board meeting a voting session for the agenda item on the rule edit for the rules and regulations regarding the partial point allocation for the detection of subluxation that has data that finds no subluxation is indicated and therefore no adjustment to apply. I will expand more about that during the licensing committee session of today's meeting. Thank you so much.
All right, and this is the moderator. Our next request for comment, I believe, is from the same user. There we go. They lowered their hand. Are there any other requests for comment from those logged in on WebEx? I do not see any other requests. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. And thank you to members of the public for your comments. Moving to agenda item number 3, board chair's report. And first thing I'd like to do is just welcome our newest board member, Dr. Claudia Sandino. And Dr. Sandino, I'd like to give you a minute or some time to just maybe introduce yourself and say hello.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Dr. Claudia Sandino. Brief information about me. I graduated from Life West Chiropractic College many moons ago. I went to school with some of the members on the board, so it's great seeing familiar faces. I've worked in Europe and Spain for 15 years as a chiropractor, and in California. I have my California license since 1996, continued maintaining it active even when I was international. And my passions are chiropractic with sports children and neurology. A little bit, that's like my background in a nutshell. If you have any specific questions, I would love to answer them. And I just want to help our profession continue with its integrity and moving forward and being successful. Thank you. And I appreciate this honor that you give me by having me as a member of the board.
Well, welcome, and we're very happy to have you. So thank you. And let me take up your offer to see if there's any board members who might have any questions for you. Anyone from the board? Hearing none, welcome again, and thank you. Pleasure
Thank
to
you.
see you here.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the chair's report, I think the first thing I'd like to do is just kind of run through as the report reflect on the accomplishments that the board has achieved in the staff, and that's inclusive the board members and the staff from 2022 to 2023. The first thing I'd like to note is, in this fiscal year, today is our 24th meeting. So a tremendous volume of meetings and a large amount of work that goes into the meetings and all the agendas and all the regulatory items that go on there. So, and I think all those meetings have really demonstrated a high level of discussion and consideration and thought. And I want to thank the fellow board members who have stepped up and really, in my view, become subject matter areas in the different departments, and I'm especially grateful for that. So thank you to the board members, and I especially want to thank Kristen Walker, our executive officer, who's done a tremendous amount of work in the background in facilitating our ability to have that many meetings, and her staff, all of her staff, and so I want to thank them. It's been a very busy year. We have 19 regulations that are currently being worked on. We've had 6 that have been approved. We're going to look at 2 more today, and so it's been a really productive year. We've also engaged stakeholders in a way that I've not experienced before since I've been on the board, and I think we continue to do that outreach, and I think we're seeing the fruits of our labor there and our efforts there. I think we're seeing more and more of our stakeholders reaching out to us, showing up to board meetings and discussing these agenda items, and also just outside of meetings having contact with the board and board members. That communication channel, I feel, is more open than it ever has been, and that's one of our goals of this year. And so into the rest of the first half of the next fiscal year, I guess. We're continue to work on the new strategic plan and achieving all the objectives there, which we've already made some good progress. And I hope to see us as busy and as efficient in a good way as we are now in 3 to 6 months from now. And so just thank everyone again. That I'm really extremely grateful for this team, from staff to board members, and I hope we can continue this the trajectory and the great work that we've done this year. It's been a really productive year. I don't know if it sets a record, 24 meetings in a year. I feel like it might, but anyway, thank you to all of you. And moderator, can you please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly, we'd be happy to take any public comment question on the chair's report. Do we have any public comment in Sacramento? Probably not.
No public comment here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment in Burbank?
We do not.
Thank you. Any public comment in Sonoma?
No public comment.
Thank you. Any comment in San Jose?
No public comment.
Thank you. Any comment in Orlando?
No public comment.
Thank you. And now we've opened the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment online. If anyone has a comment on the president's report, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Any comments? And we have a request for comment from our call-in user 5. I'll send you a request to unmute, and you can press *6 to unmute yourself. You're unmuted.
Hi, I've only just been able to log in to get on the call, and I'm not sure, is this general public comment? Am I in the right section?
I'll defer to the chair.
Is it specific to the chair, or do I need to wait for another public comment section?
So, hi,
I'm sorry.
yes, we're into an agenda item for the board chair's report, but you just missed the public comment period, the open comment period, but please feel free and take a few minutes and please we'd love to have you, have your comments done currently. Please feel free, go ahead.
Okay, so I can do that now?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I had made a public comment at an earlier meeting, and I'm very distressed that nothing has changed on the website for consumer complaint. For me, it wasn't obvious that my chiropractor was so far outside the scope of practice that I consider was an attempted sexual assault. And I've just seen a case in Irvine of a Lincoln Carrillo who had 7 victims, and that's just too many. People need to have something set up online to give them more understanding of what to expect of the chiropractor's office. Can you hear me still? Since this has been going on, I believe there's victims, and I've asked for changes. The AMA has made a public statement about the Me Too movement, but I don't see anything from the chiropractic board. And I see that the board is comprised of female members, and yet I don't see any kind of valid help to the public to navigate these kind of situations. And the format of the complaint doesn't really apply well to someone like me who's observed a situation that's possibly a mental illness and predation, but I was not a victim. I walked out. So I do need to get more help and not be, swept aside so that we can locate the actual victims and prevent them. That's my comment.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. And I would just like to, the committee cannot discuss the details of a pending licensing or enforcement matter, but you may provide your contact information to the moderator, and board staff will reach out to you to discuss your specific, complaint or enforcement matter. And again, thank you for your comments.
And this is the moderator. The participant has been muted. I would encourage them to email the board. And the email address is at the bottom of the screen, chiro.info@dca.ca.gov. Thank you. And we have, let's see, one request for comment from call-in user 3. Let me go ahead and send you a request to unmute. And again, you'll use *6 to unmute yourself. You're unmuted.
Salute, this is Falcon. The board hasn't, thank you for providing the email option for continuing with these public comments, but no one answers the emails. I've been sending so many emails, no one replies. Like zero. I got one like months ago, but I don't get any replies. That's all.
Thank you for your input. This is comments on the board chair report. And I do not see any further requests for comment on the chair report. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you again to the members of the public for your comments and your participation. Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 4, update on the Department of Consumer Affairs by the DCA Office of Board and Bureau Relations. And we have with us Judy Bucciarelli. I think I butchered it last time, but I did better this time. Judy Bucciarelli from the DCA Office of Board and Bureau Relations, and she will provide us with an update on DCA programs and activities. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Judy Bucciarelli from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Board and Bureau Relations. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to join the meeting today and present the DCA update. On behalf of the department, I'd like to welcome Dr. Claudia Sandino to the board. I'd like to begin today's presentation with a DEI update, and that is short for Diversion, Equity, and Inclusion. On May 12, 2023, DCA's DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting in person and elected a chairperson, Yafana Lamar, who currently serves as the department's tribal liaison and is also the chief of legislation for the Contractor State License Board. The committee also elected Paul Sanchez as vice chairperson. Mr. Sanchez is the executive officer of the Speech, Language, Pathology, and Audiology Board. The committee discussed training, strategic planning, and DEI activities through the end of the calendar year. Providing employees access to DEI training is a priority for the DEI Steering Committee, and in June, DCA began offering 3 courses which are available to all DCA employees. The courses are Understanding the Value of DEI in the Workplace, How to Decode Our Unconscious Bias, and Unleash the Power of Generational Differences. We are pleased to report that the response from employees to participate in these new DEI learning opportunities has been significant with high registration and attendance numbers. We expect the number of participants to increase and additional courses will be offered in the coming months. I look forward to updating you in the months ahead on the progress of the DEI Steering Committee. Moving on, the changes to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that allowed board members not to have to notice their meeting location or meet in an ADA accessible location expired on July 1, 2023. Beginning July 1, public meetings are subject to the traditional pre-COVID requirements for open meetings. DCA's boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct all public meetings in compliance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. This includes whether a meeting is held at a single centralized location or at multiple teleconference locations. Each physical meeting location will need to be identified in the meeting public notices and agendas. Board members must attend meetings in person at the notice meeting locations. All notice meeting locations, including locations where a single board member will be, must be ADA accessible, have an agenda posted, and be open to the public. And finally, the public will be permitted to attend meetings at any notice meeting location. Additionally, members of the public need to be able to hear the meeting and also be able to participate in public comment from each location. DCA has a Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act guide available and has provided your executive officer with a list of available meeting locations throughout the state. Please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations with any questions or concerns. DCA is committed to helping the boards to make this a smooth transition. SB 544, which may allow for some meetings to be held without noticing the location of the board member, thus allowing remote virtual meetings, is still moving through the legislative process, and the department's Division of Legislative Affairs is working with stakeholders and providing updates to the boards and bureaus on the status of the bill. Next, I'd like to share information on the Enlighten Enforcement Project. On July 21, 2023, DCA will attend the third walkthrough session for the Enlighten Enforcement Project that has been piloted by the Dental Board of California. The walkthrough session will cover citations, discipline, and probation processes. The project aims to learn best practices between boards to improve efficiency and standardized procedures for all DCA boards and bureaus. Equally important is the Data Governance Project. DCA is continuing its efforts to improve its reports regarding licensing and enforcement activities. The director recently led multiple work group meetings beginning in late April through early July with staff from each board and bureau to update the data metrics reported in the DCA's annual report. DCA's goal is to ensure consistency where we report data, such as our annual report, DCA's data portal, and board and bureau sunset reports. Future meetings are expected in August and ongoing to help build new reports or modify existing ones to provide these new metrics for next year's annual report. Additionally, DCA held a meeting on July 17th with all boards and bureaus to review guidance on how boards and bureaus can compile and report data to the department for inclusion in this year's upcoming annual report. The department has asked all boards and bureaus to provide their annual report data by Friday, August 4th. If extensions are needed, please contact DCA's executive office. Moving on, to further the department's efforts to reach the Californians we serve, DCA will request boards and bureaus translate any press releases issued into Spanish. California's top non-English language spoken is Spanish, and establishing a standard of translating releases into both English and Spanish will enhance the reach of information released. Boards and bureaus are also encouraged to evaluate any additional languages outside of Spanish that may serve their audiences. For additional information, please contact BBR. Next, board members who have been appointed and reappointed cannot begin their service or perform any official functions without first taking the oath of office. Unless otherwise provided, the oath may be taken before any officer authorized to administer oath. Board members should contact their executive officer to arrange taking the oath of office. Board members will be required to complete the documents listed on the board member appointment checklist, or HR5, and return them to the Office of Human Resources before assuming duties, but no less than 30 days after their appointment or reappointment. Duties cannot be assumed and appointments cannot be processed until documents are received and are accurately completed. Incomplete packets may delay per diem payments and travel reimbursements due to the member. As a reminder, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced, and approximately 2 hours. Board members with an assigned DCA email are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information. This training is online and required every year. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance in accessing the learning management system and these trainings, please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. The next board member orientation training, also referred to as BMOT, will be offered virtually on October 10th, 2023. Board members must complete BMOT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. This will be the last BMOT training of the year. Members can register for this training via LMS. My final reminder is regarding board member travel. Please keep in mind that all state travel arrangements must be made through DCA's authorized travel agency, Cal Travel Store, or Concur. When traveling by air on official state business, all board members and staff must use the most economical fares possible. If a flight is changed, there may be additional charges. Flight changes for personal convenience are not permitted or justified, and the traveler is responsible for any associated charges. Please contact Board and Bureau Relations if you have any questions regarding travel. This concludes the update, and I thank you again for the opportunity to join you today. At this time, I will turn it back to Dr. Paris, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you. Well, let me open this up to any questions or discussion from our board members. Hearing none, I do have a couple questions. I believe at our last meeting, maybe there was some interest from the board members regarding the ability for board members to participate in the DEI education training. And I don't know if we ever, I think we asked the question, but we weren't sure if that was available or possible.
Okay, I did make Melissa Gear aware of your question. Kristen, did you hear anything from her?
No, I'll follow up.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it sounds, yes.
So I think it's called Cornerstone. I was cleaning out email. I happened to click on it. And in my profile, there was the 3 DEI classes loaded, but there was no notification that they were there. So I did one of them. I couldn't do the other 2 due to conflicts in the schedule. So I don't know if that's where they are for everybody. Like I said, there was no notification. I just stumbled on it. And I did do the first one. It was a 2-hour, it was a couple weeks ago. It was the first one on the diversity, equity, and inclusion fact sheet.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
I think it's like your dashboard where you go for all your sexual harassment and all your classes that you can do, self-paced. So I would check in there.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions from, I'm sorry, Dr. Adams?
I was just going to say, I can't remember. I know that I had, when I was reappointed, I did a whole bunch of stuff back to back to back. And that may have been because I think it's jogging my memory now when Dr. Daniels was speaking. So I'm not sure if I've done those. I think I did. It seems familiar to me. But perhaps there's a way that because I know once you complete it, it's checked off. Is there a way that we can be notified what may be pending? Because I think I have to attend that meeting in October after my reappointment. But it'd be nice to just either have a link or something that we can do to check and see if some of those things have been done, or if I guess I just go back to the dashboard and check it. But sometimes it's a little bit confusing to know what I've done or what's pending, and that might just be my unfamiliarity with that dashboard.
Thank you.
Direction on that would be, I think, helpful for myself as well as our newest member as well.
I'll bring that back to Melissa here.
And the BCE staff will also look into everybody's training completions and any outstanding requirements, so that we'll send you all an individualized list if you have any outstanding trainings, and then we'll get the links to the DEI courses out to the board members as well.
Perfect. Hearing no other board member questions, moderator, can we please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly. And we have opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a comment on the DCA update, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. So I'll step through our locations. In Sacramento, is there any request for public comment?
There is no request for public comment.
Thank you. In Burbank, is there any request for public comment?
There's not.
Thank you. In Sonoma, is there any request for public comment?
No.
Thank you. In San Jose, is there any request for public comment?
No public comment.
Thank you. And in Orlando, is there any request for public comment? And Orlando?
No public comment.
Thank
No
you.
request.
Thank you very much. And now we will start with a virtual request for comment. Are there any requests for comment from our logged in members concerning the DCA report? Each speaker will have 3 minutes. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Pucciarelli, and thank you to the Office of Board and Bureau Relations. We always appreciate you coming, and nice to be here face to face. Thank you again. Moving to agenda item number 5. Review and possible approval of the January 20th, 23, April 20th, 23, and May 10th, 20th, 23 board meeting minutes. And I'd like to open this agenda item for questions or discussions by the board.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 20th, 2023, April 20th, 2023, and May 10th, 2023 board meetings.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions from the board members?
Yeah, Dr. Paris, I had a few just miscellaneous questions, not the meeting minutes look great. And I think some of the topics are coming up later. It was really some random questions about updates on certain items. So I could either ask them here or I can wait and see if they come back around. Either is fine.
Why don't you go ahead, if it's okay, go ahead and ask it now. I don't want us to miss it in case it doesn't come up.
Okay. So I just was wondering a status on, it was on page 7 of 20 on the monthly reports to the board members for tracking the status of each of the strategic planning objectives. I think that is coming up later, but I was wondering a status on that was suggested in the meeting minutes for the board members to get monthly updates on where we're at with all our projects. So I was just wondering to get a current status on if that's coming down the line.
This is Sabina. There is an update on that later. Unfortunately, right now we can't discuss that as this is just the approval of the minutes item.
Okay. So I guess
yes,
I'll ask them later then.
Yeah, it's definitely coming up later in the EO report.
Yeah, I have like more questions.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Okay, and I think during the EO report we can cover that thoroughly. Okay. Any more questions, discussion from the board members on the meeting minutes? Hearing none. Moderator, can we please open this agenda item for public comment?
Absolutely. we have opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. And if anyone has any comment on the 3 sets of minutes or the motion to approve them, you may raise your hand, or by clicking on the hand icon, you can hit the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And I'll step through the locations just as a formality. In Sacramento, do we have any requests for public comment?
No request in Sacramento.
Thank you. And in Burbank, is there any request for public comment?
No.
Thank you. In Sonoma, is there any request?
No.
Thank you. In San Jose, is there any request?
No public comment.
Thank you. And in Orlando, is there any public request?
No public comment.
Thank you very much. And I do not see any virtual requests for public comment either. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no further comment discussion, Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Sure. Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Raphael Sweet is yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
Dr. Sandino?
I believe I need to abstain because I wasn't in those meetings. So I abstain.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving to agenda item number 6. Review and possible ratification of approved Doctor of Chiropractic license applications. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the Doctor of Chiropractic licenses.
I second.
Okay. And is there any questions or discussions by the board members? Hearing none. Moderator, would you please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly. We've opened for public comment on the agenda item 6. If anyone has any comments on the license applications, you may raise your hand. If you're in a physical location, you may click on the hand icon if you are virtually raising your hand. You can click on the question mark, type comment, and click send, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Any requests for comment in Sacramento?
No requests in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any requests in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in San Jose?
No requests.
Thank you. Any requests in Orlando?
No request.
Thank you. And I do not see any requests for comment online either. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hearing no further comment, Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris? Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Moving to agenda item number 7, review and possible ratification of approved continuing education provider applications. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the continuing education providers. It's Dr. Adams.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank you,
second.
Dr. Adams.
I'll second, Dr. Daniels.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Are there any questions or discussions from the board? Hearing none, moderator, would you please open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the continuing education provider applications motion, you may raise your hand, and virtual participants may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. You may click on the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send. And our call-in users may raise their hand by pressing *3. And I'll step through the physical locations. In Sacramento, are there any requests for public comment?
No request for public comment.
Thank you. In Burbank, any requests?
No.
Thank you. Sonoma, any requests?
No.
Thank you. San Jose, any requests?
No.
Thank you. Orlando, any requests?
No requests.
Thank you. And I see no requests for comment online. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Please. Thank you. Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
and Dr. Sandino.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 8. The executive officers report and updates, and let me turn it over to Ms. Walker to give us her report.
Sure, thank you. So I have an update on a number of items this morning. If I could ask the moderators to display brief PowerPoint slides just as I run through the various topics that will encompass my report this morning. Go to the next one. I first wanted to start with an update on our administration program and our upcoming board meeting. While today's board meeting agenda is rather light for the summer meeting, we do have a number of items that are planned for the October meeting that's coming up on October 19th and 20th of this year. That meeting will be a traditional in-person meeting. We're making plans for it to be in the Los Angeles area. And for the format of that meeting would be with a 2-day meeting, the first day of which we would hear petition hearings, followed by regular board business on the second day. So staff will be reaching out to each of the board members in early August to get those reservations and get everybody set for their travel. We just need to confirm the location and we'll be in touch on that item. But wanted to make all the board members aware and any members of the public that are participating via WebEx that next meeting is very likely to be in person only. So we will get that information out. So those of you that wish to participate will have the location to attend. Another update I wanted to cover, I covered it during the committee meetings that we've already had in June, but happy to announce 2 personnel updates with the BCE staff. The first of which we hired Austin Maha, effective May 30th, as our administration technician. He joins us from another state agency, and he's joining us as an office technician. He's been a great addition to the team. He's really hit the ground running and been helping us catch up on a number of administrative items over just the past few weeks. And then I'm also happy to announce that effective June 1st, Tammy Pitto was appointed as the board's assistant executive officer. Really happy to have her in that position. Tammy's been with BCE for about 14 years. She's held roles in licensing and enforcement, and she's really going to be a key factor in helping us move a lot of our policy proposals that the board's brought forth in the last 24 meetings forward and getting them to completion. So very excited about that. We have efforts underway to backfill behind Tammy's position and then fill some vacancies. We're starting with enforcement because that's where the need is the greatest. And then we're going to, from there, continue on and fill the licensing analyst position, and then our former policy analyst position. We're going to assign that some additional duties and get that one filled as well. So excited to get started with some personnel updates. Going to be happy to share some more with you next fall, or this fall coming up. As far as the different programs, each of the units has been working with Tammy and William Walker and Dixie Van Allen on various improvements to just the way we conduct business, namely to really incorporate additional use of the Connect system, which I'll get into a little bit later in my report, but then just also really analyzing the processes that we have in place, ensuring that we have adequate documentation of those processes, just so that we're prepared for when we do fill vacancies, we can train those physicians and get them started on the right foot. So there's been a lot of effort going into that. As far as statistics itself, I'm going to reserve those for a written update following the board meeting, given that we've just gotten to the end of the fiscal year and we're currently running all the numbers. We need to verify that they're accurate before we release them. So those will be going out to the board members, and we'll make them available to the public. The deadline for DCA is August 4th, so I'm anticipating they'll be ready right around July 31st, August 1st for the board to review. Those statistics are going to be pretty helpful because looking at some of what we had been reporting to the board in prior board updates, you weren't getting the full picture, particularly with enforcement. Some of the categories that we had in the tables where you were only capturing data points like cases that were closed, no violation or insufficient evidence, it was missing additional categories of cases that were closed. We also didn't have time elements in that. So we want to incorporate that information in there. That'll be forthcoming in that report that we submit to DCA. And then we're going to also continue building additional metrics because we really need to measure the different phases of our enforcement process and provide those up to you in the report. You can go to the next slide. I think before I dive into Connect, happy to answer any questions on any of the board's programs from the board members, and probably starting with Dr. Daniels because you had a few questions before.
Well, my questions were sort of miscellaneous throughout the meeting notes. So the first one I asked, I think, is coming up later. I did have a question on the new board member resource materials as far as where we were at, as far as are those electronic yet, and have they been updated?
No, not quite yet. So we've got the framework. We're still finishing up the content. We're expecting to get that ready, especially now that we have Dr. Sandino on board. Our goal is to get that ready in the next 2 weeks, and then we're going to get it to Dr. Sandino so we can get her up and running with her orientation process, and then we'll also disperse those materials to all of the other board members as a resource as well.
Okay, great. And then Ms. Cruz had asked, it was on page 19 of 20 of one of our meeting notes about outreach to other Healing Arts Board on COVID misinformation. And I didn't know if that was still sort of in the docket with the staff.
It's on our list. We haven't had any outreach yet with the Healing Arts Boards on that specific note. We have discussed some other issues with other Healing Arts Boards.
Okay. And then my last question was on the, and I think this is coming up later, but I couldn't remember, on the consumer webpage explaining the standards of care to help the public understand the standard of chiropractic care in California. Is that coming up later as far as discussion in the different committees with putting information on our website?
Is that in reference to the public comment that we received at the last board meeting?
At the last board meeting, yes.
Yeah, we are working on materials for that consumer section where we can provide additional information about the practice of chiropractic. When we start getting into discussion of the standard of care, we have to be careful that any guidance that we're putting out isn't actually a regulation. So we'll be working closely with legal to really determine how much information we can post versus what actually would need to be in a regulation. So we're gonna walk that line, but we are gonna try to put as much information as possible on that consumer website.
Okay, perfect. That was my concern as well. Okay, thank you.
not hearing any additional questions on the various programs.
No,
Oh,
No,
no
okay.
questions. Thank you.
Mine's probably going to be the Connect stuff. So go ahead.
We're going to dive right into that one. So the second part of my update has to do with business modernization and our implementation of the Connect system. So we did have our last software update was on June 29th, and the purpose of that was to implement the AB 107 temporary licensure process for military spouses and partners. This isn't something that we are anticipating a high workload. We've yet to receive one, but we do have the functionality available and live online so that we can comply with the law that requires that we grant those temporary license types. So that was released just a few weeks ago. The other major thing that we're working on with the Connect project is upgrading to the new version of the software. The vendor was having some issues with some security maintenance in the system, so our timeline's been pushed approximately a quarter. So we were planning to have that completed right around now. We're now looking and anticipating about September that'll be up and live. The exciting part about upgrading to the new version of the software is that we're going to be on the latest version that the boards that followed. We were in cohort 1 of the business modernization project. There's a second cohort behind us that's now building on that. They're on the newer version of the software, and they're going to go behind and get us on that same version. And it's going to provide us with a lot more ability to customize our various applications, customize the information without having to involve a developer. It's something that either staff or the Department's Office of Information Services can handle, which is going to be invaluable for us because then we can use those resources elsewhere for additional development activities. Next slide, please. As far as our current priorities with our Connect project, the first is system stabilization. We are seeing an increase in use of the system, but we still are encountering occasional bugs where somebody whose license is eligible for renewal, they log into their account, they go to access the renewal button, and they're getting an unknown error message. So we are really working closely with the vendor to try to get rid of any of those occurrences in the system, really study what's causing them to occur and how do we prevent it in the future. The instance rate is much lower than what we had been observing even a year ago, even 6 months ago, but it's still out there. So we're trying to really track that down and just do what we can do to ensure that we have more 100% system reliability, that when you log in, you're going to be able to complete your renewal during that transaction. As you'll recall, we did, over the past year, we made updates to the renewal process so that you can immediately access your renewal form from the dashboard. There's no more button that either appears or doesn't appear. The button's fixed on the dashboard. We've also removed the requirement that they had to upload CE in advance to proceed with the renewal process. That way, we took the amount of time it takes to renew online from being a 10 or 15-minute process down to 1 or 2 minutes, just to fill out the questions and then make the payment just like you would on a paper application. So still working on those. Our other priorities that we currently have has to do with refining our initial Doctor of Chiropractic license application process. And I'll get into it in a minute, but that's an area where we have a very high utilization rate in the system is for new applicants coming in and requesting their initial license. We found some opportunities for a little bit of efficiency there in the way that we're handling that, particularly on the backside of the system when staff is processing applications. We're finding in our workflow that we're actually reviewing the same information twice, and it's just everything we can do to help them get through the licensure process faster and also eliminate the extra staff time of reviewing information at 2 phases of the application process will ultimately benefit all parties involved. So we're looking at that. And then another item that we're working on enhancing is we have functionality in the system for you to submit paper applications where you upload your application form and you make the payment and you submit it to us online. That was originally designed as a temporary workaround as we built out full HTML applications for all of our application types. Realizing the amount of forms that we have and their relative, they're not frequently used by our applicants and our licensees, it makes more sense to enhance that existing workflow so that it's just a little bit easier to navigate rather than invest all the resources in building HTML applications for each and every application type. So we are working on enhancements to that portion of the system as well. Next slide. Our other priority remains the implementation of our continuing education module. That is a little bit small there, so I apologize for that. But we've been thinking about it, and we're going to take a different approach than what we were initially intending to do with continuing education. So with continuing education, the initial thought was to build out the provider application process and then follow up with the continuing education course approval process. Instead, the approach we're looking to take is to build the back office workflow for staff to be able to process the course applications in the system, and then from there build to where the system's sending the automated notifications to the providers when additional information is needed or upon course approval, and also export that information to a public-facing site so that it updates in real time with the list of courses that are available. And then as the third phase of the project, bring the providers onto the platform where they can directly interact with the board, and they can upload their new course applications, and they can upload their provider certificates of completion so that it's in the system. We think that's going to allow us to get it online faster because we would start with the back office. You don't have to deal with any issues with an external user. We can work through that, and once we feel that that's stable, that's when we would then bring the providers online. So we're working through that. We're finishing up the documentation of the requirements in that approach, and then we're going to be working with the vendor to get that built late summer and into the fall. Any questions on the Connect project?
One question, I think I brought it up in our last governance meeting. You had brought it before in licensing meetings, the cashiering functionality. Is that is that update related to? Was that covered in your update anywhere? I feel like that might have been like a subset of an update.
It was not. So, so yes. So another thing that the vendor is working on is the cashiering functionality. As soon as they finished the temporary licensure implementation, they shifted, and now that's their focus. They are working to build or to bring all of the cashiering functionality into the system for our board and then the other boards that are participating in our cohort. Okay.
And is that also delayed? I imagine it's going to be delayed a quarter further because of kind of the fixes they're doing.
They're running concurrently with us upgrading the system. So they are still planning to have that done. We may be slightly delayed from the other programs just as they have to make the conversion.
Okay.
Ms. Walker, is it still recommended to do it on a desktop and not on your iPhone?
Yes, that's still the recommendation. We reiterate that during our regular meetings that they need additional stability on a mobile device. That's something that's very important to us, but it's not quite there yet. So the recommendation is that users log in and use a PC, preferably Chrome. Seems to be the most reliable web browser for accessing the system. And the next slide. Go ahead, yes, thank you.
So, what other information is being stored, or what is the security that's being taken by the board on that? Just curious about that, if it's those PII being stored as well, and how that comes into play.
There is, so with the online platform, it does have an element of licensees PII stored in the system. We are not only the department, but then also the vendor is complying with all security requirements that are used for any web hosting. So we meet all those requirements, and the department tracks to ensure that we're meeting those requirements.
Okay, and in the future, do we have, since I'm new, I don't know how it all runs. Is there like a VPN that we have to go to get into that too? Is that set up for security or not yet, or not even in the future?
There's not a VPN to log into the system, but each user has a unique username and password. And then they have, and when they link a license to their account, they have to provide certain personal information so that they verify that it's truly them when the license is linked. And then the department is working to add a multi-factor authentication to the login process, and then also get that program onto, for the staff side, onto single sign-on, which is our secure service that we use for all of our web applications.
Thank you.
And then can you go to one more slide forward? I also pulled a little bit of statistics from our system utilization rate. So during the last fiscal year, we've processed just over 6,000 transactions in the system. What's impressive is the utilization rate that we're finding for our initial applicants going through the licensure process after graduation and obtaining their initial licensure. They're actually utilizing the system at a rate of 88%. Where we're falling behind significantly is on the renewal of DC licenses. We're only at about 30%, where we would like to be much more in the area of 75 to 80%. So a few ways of kind of approaching that is one, really looking at our license application or the renewal application notice that's going out to the licensees, making sure that Connect is broadly advertised and made readily available to them so that they know that they can access that system. And then there's also some process improvements that the department's really encouraging when it comes to the processing of renewals and eventually being more paper light before you become paperless. So we'll be discussing those with licensing committee at future meetings. Any additional questions on the Connect project? But, can you go to the next slide? So I also briefly wanted to provide a status update on the board's pending regulatory proposals. So Dr. Paris touched on this during his chair's report. We really have four phases of the spread, really, of the regulatory proposals. We have 7 that are currently at a concept development level, either solely with staff or working with committees for development. You're aware of most of these we've updated, at the various committee meetings, but the enforcement committee is examining record-keeping requirements. They're looking into the supervision of unlicensed individuals within a practice. And then we've got our licensing committee has taken on quite a bit that's in this concept development phase, working through the curriculum requirements for chiropractic colleges, the order for examination of applicants, and then also chiropractic practice locations and display of license and what would those filing requirements look like in the future. Now visiting the role of inactive licenses. We had some discussion at the committee level and found that our lack of regulations around inactive licenses could be problematic just because there's no definition there of what you can or cannot do with an inactive license. So that's another concept that the licensing committee will be exploring in future meetings. Next slide, please. Then it brings us to 7 additional proposals where we have regulatory text that's being drafted by staff. So these are proposals where we've discussed with the committee, but we don't yet have final text that can be elevated to the board level for approval. So we're working through those. The first of which is a Section 100 that's becoming a bit tricky to make sure that we update all of our fee amounts, mostly because we have to track down all the forms incorporated by reference and update those as well. One additional proposal that's been out there for quite a while is the delegation of authority to the assistant executive officer and some updates to our citation program regulations. Now that we've filled that position, that's kind of moved back up on the priority list for getting that accomplished. So we'll be working with our regulatory counsel, Stephen Bong, to move that forward. We are still researching some information on the basic life support certification for all licensees and potential accommodations that might be necessary in our regulations if a person isn't physically able to obtain that certification. So we're exploring that. We're also working on regulations around the temporary licensure process for military spouses and partners. The regulations on that itself are relatively straightforward. Where the challenge lies is that some of the requirements that have to be met for the temporary license cross-reference with items like the California Chiropractic Law examination, but we have deficiencies in our regulations around that process. So it's kind of expanded to where we need to define not only how you get a temporary license, but also make some updates on how you get a permanent license. So we're working through those challenges with our reg council, and we'll be bringing that to either a licensing committee meeting, or if it requires no policy discussion, it'll go directly to the board in the coming months. We've also gotten quite a bit of feedback from the enforcement committee on our disciplinary guidelines and uniform standards. So now it's with us at staff to really draft those up into a final proposal so that we can bring those forward to the enforcement committee for hopefully one last discussion and potentially a motion to move it forward to the full board. Another one that I wanted to touch on at the June enforcement committee meeting, the enforcement committee had also reviewed some text around the filing and application process for petitions for reinstatement of licensure or reduction of penalty. They did make a motion to move that forward to the board. As we were working through some of that text, we encountered a few overlapping issues between that text as it was envisioned and our criteria for rehabilitation regulation and our disciplinary guidelines. So we're working through some of those consistency issues with our regulatory counsel, and then we will plan to bring it back to the enforcement committee if it requires any policy discussion. If no policy discussion, it'll move forward to the full board in October. And then we've also got our text around the approval of chiropractic schools and educational requirements. The board had previously approved some text around that. The board looked at it again in January, so we want to really just take that text to legal and make any necessary edits to it so that we can move that portion of the package forward. Next text. You have two regulatory text proposals on today's agenda, so we'll skip those. We will cover those under agenda item 10, B, and C. And then we have 4 regulatory packages that are pending the DCA approval. The first of which is our most important package, which is the annual continuing education requirements and the course approval process, followed by sexual contact with the patient and required actions against registered sex offenders. Then we also have the more simpler regulations to update the filing of an address of record and collect telephone numbers and email addresses from licensees, and then repeal an obsolete provision in our regulations surrounding what occurs after you pass the law examination. So we're working actively with legal to get those completed and move forward. We're excited about that. We're planning to have probably all of them in the notice period coming up this fall. So very exciting on those proposals, and then also the 2 that we're going to discuss later today. Those move into this category as well. Are there any questions from the board members on our regulatory proposals?
I think my only comment is I thank you so much for organizing it this way. I know we talked about it in a prior kind of a committee level meeting of kind of organizing it and just kind of the different phases or states that it's in. So it's very helpful. Thank you.
And to add to that point, because we probably touched on it a bit too under the Government and Public Affairs Committee report, but we did talk about the reporting of regulatory proposals and strategic plan objectives with the Government Public Affairs Committee. This, just by organizing them, does make it simpler. We do want to incorporate additional graphics and just kind of give you almost a progression with percentages. Or we're working through that, but we're going to include that in those reports that we'll be providing. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion by the board on the executive officer's report? No?
Just wanted to
hearing none.
Just wanted to comment, Dr. Paris, about really reiterating and kind of piggybacking on what you'd said earlier about what we have accomplished in the last year, and really to commend Kristen and the staff at the BCE for really bringing this all together and really giving us great direction so that we can really hammer some of these things out. And I think we're continuing to move forward in a great way, and we appreciate all that you do, or I do. From my perspective, I think the board feels the same way, that we're really doing a great service. So thank you.
Thank you. As far as the strategic plan objectives, I don't have much to report in that area. We discussed it pretty extensively with the Government and Public Affairs Committee, especially around modeling for what potential updates could look like, how we can incorporate graphics and make it something that's interactive for review and then report out. We've got some good direction. We used a template that was provided by Solid as kind of the basis for that. And then we've got some excellent suggestions from the committee that we're incorporating as well. So we're going to put that, really, the idea is that we're going to create something to the effect of similar to the box account that we're using for the board members, kind of set that up as an electronic board member resource center. And then we would be posting that document with the tracking document, and we can update that at that source. So we'll bring that back for the board as well. I did want to conclude my report with an update on the budget. So we can start with.
So real quick, going back to the strategic plan. So when can we anticipate kind of having access to kind of, I'll call it a dashboard of the strategic plan?
I would say within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're really taking that along with the getting the new board member materials finalized and posted in that same place. We would then have that report of our statistics, and we would include the strategic plan there as well.
Full package. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as the board's budget, I just wanted to provide just a bit of a breakdown to show kind of where our expenses lie when you talk about within DCA. So just a brief breakdown of where the money goes, especially looking in the last fiscal year. So as you can see, about 40% of that's going to personnel, salary, and benefits. And we actually had significant savings over the last fiscal year due to the vacancies that we had and kind of our strategy of intentionally keeping those vacant so that we could have some temporary budgetary relief. But it still accounted for about $1.6 million. Then we have about another 20% of our funding goes directly to DCA for the pro rata services that they provide. Being such a small board, they really do provide quite a bit of assistance to us. And in turn, we pay the pro rata to the department. Looking at this last fiscal year, we spent about $671,000 at the Attorney General's office, which is actually lower than what we spent last year. It's significantly less. We also had cost savings at the Office of Administrative Hearings. We were at $82,000, which is significantly less than what we spent in the last fiscal year. About another $54,000 accounts for our subject matter experts in our enforcement program. They support after we conduct an investigation and we need to substantiate whether a violation has occurred or not. They evaluate the case and provide us with an expert report. They also testify at our administrative hearings if necessary. And you've got about another $131,000 in rent and other facility charges here at DCA. And then we've got our other operating expenses. And then if I could ask you to switch to the fund condition report. This is our standard budget and fund condition. Of note, since the last update, if we could zoom out just a bit on that so we can see it.
Individual will have to zoom out.
Oh, okay. You can, for each of you participating, you can zoom in and out and scroll, I believe, by controlling your screen. What I wanted to highlight that's changed since the board's last review of the budget and fund condition is particularly we began making payments for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. As you'll recall, we have an outstanding loan of about $1.5 million. We had enough cost savings in this year that we were able to begin making those annual payments, and then we've worked with the department's budget office to plan those payments in, so you see them in future fiscal years as well, the $250,000 annual repayments. We anticipate that that'll take 6 fiscal years, and then we can remove that loan. As the board would recall, that was one of the items that was brought up during our sunset review, was that loan and the status of repayment. So we've built in some money there so that we can begin paying that back. We also had a settlement payment from litigation that was included in there. So overall, that accounts for about $400,000 less of our reversion over the fiscal year, but we still do have a net reversion of, we're about $250,000 under budget or compared to what we brought in revenue. So overall, we're in a good state, but when you look at the very last line of the report, when you're looking at the months in reserve, we really do want to be in a place where we see that growing. So keep in mind that this is kind of worst case scenario because it plans that we would spend our full expenditure every fiscal year where we do typically revert money. So we're watching that very closely. But if if we go into another fiscal year or two and we're fully spending our budget, we are going to be having those discussions about the potential need for restructuring fees. And it's also going to be in line with the report that we'll be developing with the Government and Public Affairs Committee just on our license structure and fees that we have to submit to the legislature. So really all is well right now with the budget, but it's just something that we are continuing to closely monitor and communicate regularly with the Department of Budget Office.
A question I had on the prior slide, what's it called? A question I had was around you mentioned for the AG and the OAH line items that they were kind of lower than normal. What are the drivers around that we're finding? Is it just less, kind of less need for, I imagine we still have a good amount of enforcement items coming through. So
yeah, so that's actually a great question. So what we kind of found in retrospect of we last fiscal year 21-22, we overspent that AG line item.
I remember that. That's why I was like,
yeah. And a lot of what we found on a lot of that was we did have an increase in referrals, but then we also had an increase in cases that were going to hearing, and we weren't as aggressive with reaching out and negotiating settlements when appropriate. We were more successful at doing that this year. And that's why there's significant reduction in what we're spending, not only at the AG's office, but also OAH, because we've had a lot less hearings. You recall with all the mail votes that you've been receiving through the year, the majority have been stipulations and good ones, because we also have some surrenders in there, but you're seeing a lot less proposed decisions, which results in very significant costs for the AG to prepare for the hearing and then also for OAH to conduct it.
Okay. Yeah, my big question was around, like, is this sustainable? Especially if we're fully staffed, kind of moving forward, and kind of would have to watch the pennies.
So those numbers, yes, those numbers do anticipate fully staffed. So that's why when we look at expenditures from year to year, this year's expenditures, 3.6 million. Next year they're budgeting 5.2. That's including all the additional, the 3% increase in costs, but then also fully expending the budget for the AG line item, OAH, and being fully staffed.
Okay.
So we're still in a pretty good position, but we are watching it very closely, just being aware that this next fiscal year coming up, we will be hiring additional staff, and we also need to make some investments in much needed IT equipment. And that concludes my update for the EO report. Happy to answer any additional questions.
Any questions or discussion by the board members on the executive officer's report? Well, before we open it to public comment, I just want to circle back and say that, having the board fiscally healthy, functional, and continuing with efficiencies I just want to say I think you're doing a really great job for us. So thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Moderator, can we please open this agenda item for public comment?
Absolutely. So if anyone has any comments on the executive officer's report, you may look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen. Click that, type the word comment, and click send. Anyone may also raise their hand to make a comment by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. I will step through the in-person locations as a formality in case we have any comments there. Are there any requests for comment in Sacramento?
Nope. No public requests for comment.
Thank you. Any requests for comment in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any requests for comment in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any requests for comment in San Jose?
No requests.
Thank you. Any requests for comment in Orlando?
No requests. I just want to say this looks great to me, but no requests from public.
Thank you. Fantastic. We do have one virtual request for comment from call-in user 3. I'm going to send your request to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. And a reminder, *6 will unmute you. You're unmuted.
Hello, this is Falcon. About the in-person meeting in October, will WebEx also be available, or will the public need to also be present in person to participate at that full board meeting? Judging from the response I'm getting, like as of late, like I'm not getting much response, and I worry that if WebEx isn't available for October, and I commit to being present for the meeting in October, and I don't get any response from being present, it is a bit disheartening to put in that much effort and not get any cooperation from the board. I understand for the board being in present because that's guaranteed cooperation, but as a public seat, like I would hope that WebEx is still open for the public. Thank you.
And I do not see any further requests for public comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And thank you to the member of the public for the comment. And I would just note that we are exploring the ability to have that meeting be available via WebEx and hybrid that way. So thank you for that. Okay. And again, thank you, Ms. Walker, for your report and update. We will, if there are no objections, I'd like to take a quick 10-minute bio break. And when we return, we will return to agenda item number 9, the licensing committee report.
No objection.
I have 10, let's make it 10:30. Let's return at 10:40. Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And let me let the attendee board members fill in. And Mr. Sweet, would you please, can we just do a quick roll call just to establish quorum again before we get going?
Sure. Dr. Paris,
Present.
Dr. Adams,
Present.
Raphael Sweet, present. Ms. Cruz,
Present.
Dr. Daniels,
Present.
Dr. Sandino.
Present.
Great, thank you. Okay, agenda item number 9, our licensing committee report. And let me just turn it over to Dr. Daniels to provide us an update on the licensing committee.
Okay, so we met on May 12th and we had extensive conversation about the issue of the overly prescriptive curriculum requirements in California. And as everyone may know, this has been an issue for years. And there was a proposal made several years ago, but it wasn't really fully vetted. And so then it kind of came back around to us. And so in our last board meeting, we talked about Dr. Paris and Ms. Walker and I, we met with some people in education to talk about California's curriculum and sort of how to move it forward and how to change it. And so after that conversation, I met independently with 3 people that participated in that conversation, talking about the challenges and kind of from the school's perspective, what challenges there are, how to move it forward. As we know, the Initiative Act is, from 1922, and it is outdated and it is inflexible, but not all the requirements are without merit. And if you look at 1922, like it was really well done, and it was needed at the time, really kind of solidified the chiropractic curriculum. 100 years later, now we sort of need to adapt and move that forward. So we've been doing a lot of research as to what the best way to move California's curriculum forward while maintaining sort of guide rails for the unique population that California has. There was some conversation about turning everything over to the CCE. And if you read their documentation, they still say that it is the state's duty to find their own way and their own prescriptive rights that are in line with their cohort. So California is very different than Florida, is different than New York. So so we've had a lot of conversation around that. And during that meeting, Ms. Walker stated at the end of that meeting that she believed they had a lot more information to sort of move the language forward and update it. So one of the concerns or suggestions was we'll just open the act. I talked to several leaders in education that actually didn't think that we were quite ready for that, and that a way to move California's curriculum forward and make it more flexible is to change the language in the regulation. And so there were some suggestions made as to how to do that. One of the ways to do that is using the word equivalence. So, 4,400 hours and or equivalent. And there is conversation with CCE as far as getting them on board with that as well. So it's still very much a work in progress. So we did, as I said, Ms. Walker and staff is working on updating the language. In addition to that, we have to consider that I know there's been some concern about the prescriptive requirements in certain areas. And if we rewrite the regulatory language, this is kind of what we're stuck with for a certain amount of time. So we need to step back and sort of look at where is California going to be in 20 years? And, nobody saw COVID coming. And so even though competency-based education and EPAs has really, competency-based education started after World War II. And so this has been going on for a while, but when COVID came around, it really shifted those EPAs and hybrid models of learning more forward because that's what we needed. And so we're considering all those options of how do we make the curriculum what we want for California, say, including pharmacology and dermatology, which some other states don't include, and making it more flexible. So not having a brick and mortar, having maybe a hybrid. I talked to some professors at SCU that they have a hybrid model for physical therapy that's going really well. So there's a lot of considerations that we're discussing in order to come up with language that sort of safeguards California for the years to come, but also allows for the flexibility. So does anybody have any questions on that portion?
Yes. Dr. Daniels, I'm curious, when you've had conversations with these professors at different schools and stuff, is it our chiropractic act that makes it less fluid for us? Because it seems like I'm hearing a lot about how physical therapy and some of these other healing boards can just kind of move rather quickly in morphing and adopting and more fluid in things. Like hearing the physical therapy already has like a hybrid education and it's going well. It's like, when did they start that and how quickly did they move on that? And is it because they don't have an act like we do that was constitutionally ratified, and they're more regulatory board that they can move quicker? Or it seems that we move so much slower and I hear these other people move so much faster. Is it just my impression or is that reality?
I mean, that's my understanding. And again, I'm somewhat new to this topic. I mean, I have been doing trying to do a lot of background work on it. So that is my understanding, is that those prescriptive rights are slowing us down. And that's why the committee really wants to change, where I think we can really dig in, is change the regulatory language. And then that really is going to open up the flexibility for schools to kind of get the job done, but not so prescriptive. So when I talk to one of the educators and we really go into a deep conversation about, there's conversation about number of hours and, how many clinic hours, and, the hours is not really the issue. When you really get them to commit to the statement of, what do you need? What do you want? It really is more the content, the prescriptive content. It's not really the hours, at least from the digging that I've done in the scholars that I've talked to at the universities. The hours, it really isn't the big issue. It is really the prescriptive content. So if you read it, anatomy needs this, right? So it's all those prescriptive details that are somewhat outdated, not contemporary, and they're cumbersome. That's what the licensing committee is trying to work on. And we have some work groups set up before presenting it to the board, to see if we can really work on that with legal, and what can we do to really open that up. One of the people who did the hybrid for physical therapy is actually a medical doctor. He's actually a DC as well. And it was a small cohort of a hybrid model where people can learn from home online, and then doing intensives for their clinical coming to the campus. So again, it really just feeds into the whole conversation with EPAs and what does that mean, that, a health professional needs to have communication skills, that we need to be professional. There's, 7 main qualities, family, home life. So it's really incorporating all those things. And as you read the literature, this is not an easy thing to do. And, people that started with competency-based education and EPAs, they're still struggling to implement it, because you have faculty to deal with, you have brick and mortar to deal with, you have curriculum to deal with, you have to change financial, right? If I go from a quarter and that's when I get my financial aid, and you start splitting into a hybrid where someone who finishes sooner can then move into the next one, course, they're waiting. And so you have the financial considerations as well. So this isn't just an issue of, oh, let's just change how many clinic hours you need. And one, it's not fair to the rest of the institutions and the rest of, the people who have, met certain competencies. Our clinic requirements, when you go into clinic, that's the closest to an EPA that I think that chiropractic has, which means you start in class and you observe, and then you start to touch, but you're constantly being observed. And once you get to clinic, then you start being unobserved, right? So it's that progression in order to be entrustable, that you go through those stages, and clinic is the closest, at least in my mind, to stage 4, where the student is still being monitored. It's a little more hands-off, but they're still in the safeguard of a clinic with a clinician, overruling them. And that is, in all the areas that I sort of read, it is the assessment, the treatment, and then the reassessment. And if you don't have all 3 of those in that particular arena, then we're sort of missing it, because you get the pieces before that. It's putting it all together. And so one of the people sent me their rubrics for how they assess people, because that's the other consideration when you're dealing with this, is how do we assess the students if we're not doing the traditional way, like, an exam. How are we assessing them? And then you have to train the faculty to assess them appropriately as well. And so there's a lot of rubrics out there on how we do that. Did they do this? Did they do, et cetera. So yes, and sorry, it was a little long-winded, but yes, we're moving slower. That's what we're trying to work on, is changing that. And then perhaps once we have solidified that, and we keep those guardrails, then we can sort of open the act, but we don't really have that in place yet. So But do know, I mean, all other health professionals are moving forward in this, but it is not without challenges.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that portion? Hearing none. So we also started the conversation on the preceptor and postceptor, and it really was just kind of a beginning conversation. The staff, the committee recommended that the staff start to investigate out of state, what other colleges, what other states are doing. We do want to reach out to the colleges here and see what their challenges are. Some of the considerations are, you know, we just don't have really clear regulations. So there's been some concern with interns staying on for a really long time, and that postceptor in the college is still attached to them. So, you know, we want really good preceptors, meaning are they giving formative feedback, immediate feedback, you know, not just having somebody come in and, you know, walk around. Are they actually getting feedback from that preceptor? And so we're in the beginning of that conversation and trying to get some regulations around that. One, to enhance the program for the student intern, again, moving towards clinical competency, making sure everybody coming out with a level of clinical competency that is similar, and also taking some weight off the colleges and making that a little bit more defined. And then so those are the highlights from the meeting. Any questions? Ms. Cruz, anything to add?
No, that covers everything.
I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Paris.
Well, first, thank you very much, Dr. Daniels. I consider you our subject matter expert on the competency-based education and trustable professional activities, the EPAs you mentioned, and how we can all help the colleges move forward chiropractic education. So thank you. The deep dive you've taken into this and what you've brought to the board has been invaluable to the public, to the staff, to the board members. So thank you very much. Hearing no questions or further discussion from the board members, moderator, can we please open this up for public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on the report, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. And our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And I will step through the in-person locations. Is there any request for comment in Sacramento?
No public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any requests in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in San Jose?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in Orlando?
No requests.
Thank you. And I do see one hand raised, so I will go ahead and call in user 3. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning, and you'll use *6 to unmute yourself. And you're unmuted.
Hello, this is Falcon. Back in October, the chair and the vice chair approved of the agenda item for the licensing committee to address the rule edit for the partial point allocation for the detection of subluxation with data that finds no subluxation and no adjustment to apply. Since October, it's been 9 months, and it's still in, what do you call it, the conceptual stage. I would hope that, I would beckon that the board recognize that the licensing committee should prioritize public safety even at its weakest level at the college clinic, prioritizing, changing the curriculum seems grandiose and romantic, but I think in the interest of public safety, to address something that is already accepted by the state with health insurance, CPC 99213 insurance code, that already gives credence to the detection of subluxation and a finding that there's no subluxation and no adjustment to be made. I ask that the board direct the licensing committee staff to draft language for the college version of the CPT 99213 for the partial point for a vote, for draft language for a vote at the next board meeting to submit to the legal counsel, or at least shift it from concept to whatever stages after, because for the past 9 months I've been hearing about the same thing about what the license committee wants to do about things. Like it's I don't know how, I've never been given more than 6 months to finish any assignment that my professor gives me as a student of chiropractic, and it's just an atypical allotment of time to give any professional for an agenda item that has been approved by executives. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do not see any further I do have one more request for comment from someone logged into WebEx as Greg Snow. Greg, I'll send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you'll have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. And you're unmuted.
Everyone, and thank you for all of your hard work on behalf of the state to keep chiropractic safe for everyone. Specific to Dr. Daniel's commentary on updating the regulations from the educational perspective, and I'm involved with running a chiropractic educational program. We're constantly battling, of course, with the outdated regulations that California has, and the accreditation requirements that are, of course, in place and continually morphing and updating over time, specific to quality patient care and other meta competencies. And, I just caution, I guess, the board in terms of trying to look at what items the CCE is not addressing within the state that need specific state regulations versus being redundant to the CCE. And competency-based education would be great, and we certainly have qualitative measures that are in our institution, and I assume all chiropractic institutions, that the CCE requires us to demonstrate for each individual students that they've met all the meta competencies. But when you move to a competency-based system, I just want to point out, then hours, having a specific number of hours required for chiropractic education becomes a challenge, because under competency based, you could have people go through the program much quicker. And so the nuances of that, become problematic in the same way that, if you put quantitative measures within the boards or within the state regulations, those quantitative measures can change over time. We currently have, the 1990 CCE quantitative requirements for clinic that the CCE has gotten rid of 10, 12 years ago, but we still have to adhere to those in the state while we're trying to deal with actual qualitative factors for our accreditors. So I think it's great what you're doing and shifting towards
15 seconds.
Towards alignment and updating towards quality patient care, but again, I would encourage you, try not to duplicate what the Council on Chiropractic Education is doing. Thank you.
And I do not see any further requests for public comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank
Thank
you. And once again, thank you, Falcon and Dr. Snow. Thank you, valuable feedback for the board. Thank you very much. And just update report, no vote needed. So thank you again, Dr. Daniels. Appreciate all your hard work and appreciate the thorough update. Moving to agenda item number 10. And our enforcement committee report. And I will turn it over to Dr. Adams to update us on the enforcement committee.
Thank you, Dr. Paris. The enforcement committee has been getting a lot done with the assistance of our XO and our staff helping us move things along. I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here so that we can get to the two items that we really want to address and vote on today. A little bit by way of background, we met on June 8th, 2023 and discussed the proposals that relate to discipline against licensees by other public agencies and licensee reporting of convictions, disciplinary actions, and other violations to the board, specifically to amend titles, CCR Title 16, Sections 304 and 314. Back at the May 19th board meeting, as part of the comprehensive or the CPEI Comprehensive Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative, the board approved proposed language to amend Title 16, Sections 304 and 314, and to add a CCR Title 16, Section 317.3 licensee reporting requirements. So the staff subsequently merged Sections 317.3 with Section 314 to place the licensee reporting requirements in a single section. We're consolidating some things and moving things forward. So I'm going to cut to what our idea of and what we want to submit to the board relative. Hopefully, I'm assuming that all of you have read the everything here, so we can just hit these couple paragraphs and then move to the motion relative to Section 304 and 314. So the proposed the proposal to amend Title 16, Section 304 expands the board's authority to take action against a licensee based on any disciplinary action taken against the licensee by another licensing entity or authority in California or another state, an agency of the federal government, the United States military, or another country for any act or conduct that is substantially related to the practice of chiropractic. The existing regulation limits the board's authority to the discipline of a license or certificate to practice chiropractic or any other healthcare profession by another state. The proposal enhances consumer protection by ensuring the board can take appropriate disciplinary action against a licensee who has been disciplined by any other state or federal agency rather than just another state. If the licensee's act or conduct is substantially related to the practice of chiropractic in California. In addition, this proposal provides consistency in making the determination of a substantial relationship between the licensee's act or conduct and the practice of chiropractic by aligning it with the board's existing criteria found in CCR Title 16, Section 316.5. Also, as it relates to Title 16, Section 314, licensee reporting requirements, this proposal to amend CCR Title 16, Section 314 clarifies the existing duty of each licensee to notify the board in writing of any violation of the Act, statutes governing the practice of chiropractic, or board regulations committed by any individual, such as another licensee or an unlicensed person, so the board may take appropriate action against the individual. Through the addition of, quote, by any individual, close quote, to this text, the proposal underscores the obligation of every licensee to inform the board when they observe or are made aware of a violation. In addition, the proposal imposes a new requirement for licensees to report the following actions against themselves to the board in writing within 30 days of any such occurrence. 1, bringing the bringing of an indictment or information charging a felony. 2, an arrest. 3, a conviction of any felony or misdemeanor. And 4, any disciplinary action taken by another state or federal agency, the United States military, or another country. The proposed subdivision E clarifies that the making this required report to the board shall not be construed as an admittance of wrongdoing by the licensee. In short, this proposal enhances consumer protection by ensuring the board receives timely reports of actions taken against licensees and notifications of violations of the act and board regulations committed by any individual, so the board can initiate investigations and take appropriate action to protect the public if wanted. So what we're hoping at this meeting is to ask the board to consider the committee's recommendation and the proposed language to amend CCR Title 16, Sections 304 and 314. If the board wishes to proceed with the regulatory proposal as drafted, staff recommends that the board make the following motion. Chairman Paris, would you like me to propose the suggested motion, or did you want to have discussion?
I think you can propose the motion. We'll see if we get a second, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay. So I motion that we approve the proposed regulatory text for California Code of Regulations, CCR, Title 16, Sections 304 and 314 in Attachment 2. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Affairs and the Business and Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive or technical changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations for CCR Title 16, Sections 304 and 314 as noticed. That is my motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Sweet. And let me open it up for any questions or discussion by the board.
I had Dr. Adams, I just had a question on the attachment 2 with the language, first paragraph sort of towards the end. I noticed that grounds for denial of the chiropractic license was struck. And so when I think I'm a little confused when I mean, I think it looks great. I was just a little confused. It said shall constitute for disciplinary action against the licensee, but do we not want to have also in there denial of a license, or is that redundant?
I can answer that question if that's okay, Dr. Adams.
Sure. Take it away.
Specifically, that provision was removed because legislation over the past few years, commonly referred to as AB 2138, really revamped the process for denying a license to somebody on the basis of a criminal conviction or a disciplinary action in another agency. So really that, what the result of that was our adoption of regulations around making the substantial criteria relationship determination and our criteria for considering the denial of a license. So really, in a sense, between the legislation and the regulation updates that we've already made in response to that legislation, it becomes redundant and unnecessary for us to include that in this reg.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate you helping me out there.
Any further questions or discussion from the board members? Okay. Hearing none, moderator, would you please open for public comment?
Certainly. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can either raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. They can look for the question mark icon, tap that, type comment, and click send. Calling users may press *3 to raise their hand, and in-person members can raise their hand in the room. Checking through with our physical locations just to make sure, are there any requests for comment in Sacramento?
No public requests for comment.
Thank you. Any comments in Burbank?
There are not.
Thank you. Any comments in Sonoma?
None.
Thank you. Any comments in San Jose?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in Orlando?
No public comments.
Thank you. And I do not see any requests for public comments virtually either. So shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
Dr. Sandino.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Motion passes. And let me pass this back to Dr. Adams to continue on here.
Thank you. So our next item that we want to bring before the board is related to continuing education requirements for petitions for reinstatement of revoked or surrendered license. Amend CCR Title 16, Section 365. Section 365 states, quote, any person making application for reinstatement or restoration of a license which has been revoked shall be required to fulfill the continuing education requirements for each year the license was revoked and may be required to complete an approved course of continuing education or to complete such study or training as the board deems appropriate, close quote. During the October 6th, 2022 meeting, the Continuing Education Committee discussed how the board frequently observes that petitioners repeat the same CE courses to fulfill this requirement instead of completing a variety of courses because the board's regulation did not restrict or prohibit them from earning CE credit multiple times by repeating a course. The committee also discussed how petitioners whose licenses have been revoked or surrendered for at least 5 years should be required to take and pass the National Board of Chiropractic Examiners Part 4 examination in order to be reinstated. Following the discussion, the committee recommended the Enforcement Committee discuss amending CCR Title 16, Section 365 to 1, limit the repetition of CE courses by petitioners, 2, consider requiring the NBC Part 4 examination before reinstatement of a license that has been revoked or surrendered for 5 years or more, and 3, consider setting a maximum of 4 renewal cycles of continuing education. At the June 8th meeting, the Enforcement Committee reviewed and discussed these recommendations. Following the discussion, the committee recommended that CCR Title 16, Sections 365 be amended to include a maximum cap of 96 hours, equivalent to 4 renewal cycles, including the mandatory hours and subject areas, and to prohibit a petitioner from receiving credit for a repeated course. The committee also discussed the use of NBC Part 4 examination to assess current competency for petitioners whose licenses have been revoked or surrendered for 5 years or more. While the committee generally agreed with this recommendation, the committee discussed potential circumstances where the board may wish to retain and exercise its discretion when using a petition decision, and suggested that this recommendation be incorporated into the proposed revisions to the board's disciplinary guidelines. Subsequently, the staff drafted proposed text to amend Title 16, Section 365 to reflect the committee's recommendations. So at this meeting, we are asking the board to consider this suggested motion. So our motion is to approve the proposed regulatory text, let me back up. approve the proposed regulatory text for California Code of Regulations, CCR Title 16, Section 365, and Attachment 3. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive or technical changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulation for CCR Title 16, Section 365, as noticed.
Well, that's a mouthful. Thank you very much, Dr. Adams.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second. Jeanette Cruz.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Are there any questions or discussions on this issue or the motion from the board?
Dr. Adams, I just wanted a clarification. So the 96 hours for the four renewal cycles without repeating a course. So in our continuing ed, we agree, you can't repeat it in that year for current licensees, but they could take it the next year as long as it wasn't in that year. So I just wanted to clarify on the 96 hours for the four, equivalent to 4 years, are we saying that they can't repeat the class at all in that time frame? Does that make sense?
Yes.
For our current, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think the conclusion of the enforcement is that that there's enough continuing education out there that if someone is diligent and is really serious about renewing their license, that they could get their 96 hours without repeating a course over and over and over. And so, yes, in the new CE guidelines, there is only the rule will be stipulated that you can't repeat a course, the same course within a year. And for people getting the reinstatement of their license, they can't repeat a course, even though they may be doing some of that coursework over 3 or 4 months, which will not give them that year's allowable time. There's enough out there that they can accomplish that requirement. If they're less than, as long as they're less than 5 years.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I just wanted to clarify that that's what we were saying. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll ask Kristen to clarify if I misspoke there, to clarify if I misspoke, but that's my understanding of what the enforcement committee determined is that 96 hours, none of those courses could be repeated. They can do an ethical course. It just can't be the same course in ethics. They can do a technique. It just can't be the exact same technique course. Is that your understanding?
That's correct.
Dr. Paris and Kristen?
Yes, that's the intent there of the language in subdivision C, and we wrote it rather broadly so that it would include if the course is repeated by the same provider with the same title, content, or approval number, so that we could kind of cover it that way, knowing that, with the annual approval, it may not have the same approval number, but if it's the same course, then we can determine it's the same content. We're not going to count that towards those up to 96 hours that are required. So the reason for the 96 is that we still have that language in there that they have to complete the continuing education for each year. So some people may only need to complete 2 years of CE, but up to a maximum of 96, and then staff will be ensuring and checking those courses to ensure that there's no repetition in them. Even if it doesn't have the same approval number, but if it's the same course, it's not going to count.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really happy to see this in front of us today. And I know this issue has brought up questions and concerns from board members and staff for a lot of years. So I'm really happy to see this coming to this stage here today. And I think we've struck a really nice balance of not having, continuing education hours be somewhat punitive to our desire to allow licensees to rehabilitate. And so, there were some that were looking at hundreds of hours, and at some point it felt like it was somewhat unnecessary. But I also think the public protection mechanism that's in place with not allowing them to do the same course and making sure they cover broad areas and different courses and making sure they kind of get a more full educational opportunity through not allowing that. So I personally really happy to see this here, and thank you. Are there any other questions, discussions by the board?
I think my comment isn't necessarily on the regulation, but my comment, I'm already thinking operationally with Connect. I was like, well, how does this happen? I imagine you mentioned kind of the course approval number is specific to the kind of registered course, I imagine, and that's kind of at least kind of that first line of defense to identify if there's a repeated course. And then you mentioned if there's an additional for a renewal of that course, what's it called? That's kind of where staff comes in to double check that.
Correct, and we are going to build in the ability for us to identify those courses as they evolve over time. So if it's the same course and they're essentially renewing it, but they're applying for reapproval, we can link the prior approval numbers. That way we can quickly automate that check, but make sure that that's in place.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add to that, my experience has been that Dixie Van Allen has been excellent at having a broad overview of all of these courses and things that are similar but really the same. And so, yeah, I think we're in good hands.
Dr. Paris actually made me think of something. So with our current licensees, with the 24 hours, we have certain areas that you must take these classes in. Is that going to be the same for the 96 hours that the portion has to be in competency area 1, 2, and 3 that are required now for the current licensees? Like, is it segregated that, you know, like say 12 of our hours have to be in certain areas, 12 can be elective? Of the 96, are we gonna have that requirement as well, or is it just any 96?
Who's that question for, Pamela?
Or whoever.
Well, the same rules are going to apply. The requirement out of the 96, for 4 years, all the rules are going to apply for the year's worth of requirements. They have 24 hours for that year. Once the new CE requirements are in place, that's going to apply to whoever does apply for reinstatement.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was in the language and that it wasn't, that it was clear in the language that comes by.
It is in subdivision A, where that's where we added that they're required to fulfill the annual continuing education requirements of section 361 for each year. Section 361 is that broad regulation in the package that the board had already approved, where it spells out all the requirements of the 24 hours, the maximum of 12 hours of distance learning under that new definition of distance learning, and breaking down the mandatory competency areas. So that's where we made that connection, and it would apply over. So for each year, you have to do the equivalent of the annual requirement that's in effect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you go to page 4, paragraph 2 at the end, it says, we recommended CCR Title 16, Section 365 be amended to include a maximum of 96 hours equivalent to 4 renewal cycles, including the mandatory hours and subject areas, and to prohibit a petitioner from receiving credit for repeated course.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hearing none, moderator, can we please open this for public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion, you may look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen. Click the question mark, type the word comment, and click send. Anyone may also raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon, and call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. If you are in person, you may raise your hand to catch the attention of the board member. I'll step through the board locations just as a formality. In Sacramento, are there any requests for comment?
No requests for public comment in Sacramento.
Thank you. In Burbank, any requests for comment?
None.
Thank you. In Sonoma, any requests for comment?
No.
Thank you. Any requests in San Jose?
No requests.
Thank you. Any requests in Orlando?
No request.
Thank you. And I do not see any requests for comment online virtually. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
Dr. Sandino,
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And I just want to thank Dr. Adams again. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this. As I said, I'll say it again, I'm really happy to see this one make its way through. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to
Let's
give
move
credit
to-
where credit's due, and Dr. Paris and again the staff brings us the information, helps us look well prepared, which I'm greatly appreciative of all their hard work.
Agreed. Thank you for that. Moving to agenda item number 11, Government and Public Affairs Committee report. And I will turn it over to Committee Chair, Ms. Cruz, to provide us with an update.
Yeah. The Government and Public Affairs Committee, we had met on June 16th, 2023. There were about 3 main topics in that meeting, aside from the normal routine updates that that was actually covered earlier in the executive officer's update. So I'm going to focus on the strategic plan updates, the outreach plan, as well as redesigning the board member onboarding process and orientation. So first, with the strategic plan objectives, I think it's going to be a repeat of what you said earlier, to be honest, is that I'm excited to see kind of in the upcoming weeks what staff is going to kind of present to us, and just kind of the interactive model for us to see kind of what the different statuses are across the different areas, both kind of at the objective level, but also at the implementation level as well. And so kind of more to come with that. For the next topic was the outreach plan. A big part of our strategic plan was looking at our outreach and our approach. So I would say in the pages within, let's say, your board materials, you're going to find kind of the proposed outreach and communication plan. But I will note that there's a big focus on the how. So, right, you're not going to see kind of the when, you're not necessarily going to see kind of the who there just yet, but it really is the how we're going to approach, what is staff's recommendations of how to approach these different stakeholder groups. So it's a huge amount of leveraging kind of our online presence, but really the relationships we have between the different chiropractic colleges, professional associations, kind of other, what's what I write here, other state and chiropractic boards, and really I would say just the overall general stakeholders of our applicants, our students, continuing education providers, and looking at kind of each area, what makes sense of how they're going to interact with us. But also, I think one thing that really stood out to us, I think that kind of we had a little bit of discussion on, was those listening sessions as well, of what that looks like. I think Ms. Knight mentioned kind of some examples of other boards that are doing that as well. Let's see here. Any questions on kind of the communication plan?
Ms. Cruz?
Mm-hmm.
This looks amazing. Under the students, it says for presentations for students on avoiding, tips to avoid common enforcement violations. And I was just wondering if that should also be in the licensees. I know in previous meetings, we've sort of talked about kind of little snapshots for our licensees of, hey, remember this. And so I'm just wondering if that should be under the licensees as well.
Yeah, I remember that discussion when we were doing the strategic plan. So yeah, I think it's a good addition. Yeah, I remember the discussion because we were also talking about what if we put it on social media as well, right? Top 10 things to remember, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right, moving on to the last topic here, strategic plan, redesigning the board member onboarding procedures and orientation process. What you're also going to find in kind of your board materials is kind of an updated version of both the onboarding process as well as proposed orientation approach. So I'd say changes between what you've seen before and what you have in front of you now. I believe there is the addition of adding in the new members' first committee meeting. So so it really is kind of the first, I would say, first page here is that first week of appointment, within the first 2 weeks, within the first 45 days of appointment, really that introduction of getting to know the board, its role, I would say the different, I would say areas of focus that we have, the different folks are going to be interacting with, you know, training, all those kind of fun things. And on the second page, really is kind of where the focus is of the board members' first time, their first time with a mail vote, first time with a committee meeting, first board meeting. And so really just kind of looking at those kind of different first milestones of a board member, making sure that they're ready to fully participate and fully engage. Any questions on this kind of the onboarding process, at least for that timeline?
Just a comment, lots of great ideas, a lot of great work. Thank you for that. Looks really good.
All thanks to staff, yes. Next item here, attachment number 3, proposed outline for new board member orientation session. So there's a difference between, I would say, the past copy and the current copy you have. I would say 2 areas. In the first section, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th bullet point, we added including board role as it relates to legislative and regulatory processes. There was a reference to regulatory and legislative processes, but I would say, as a lot of us are experiencing, we definitely have a role in, I would say, providing recommendations, doing research, and kind of really kind of getting our hands dirty in there. The next bullet point, there was another addition with including Robert's Rules of Order, and just really kind of giving all of us, you know, I would say I personally wouldn't mind refreshers on this, but kind of getting that in place, because it was definitely, I would say, a bit of a culture shock in my first meeting of, so when do I talk? And so I would say that was a welcome addition to this. And that is my update.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Are there any other questions or discussion by the board? Hearing none, I would say I really like the idea of checking in and having some milestones, and and you're in a perfect position to kind of identify those, you know, those kind of speed bumps and those milestones that are important and maybe need some extra, you know, attention to the new board members. And I also think that we're in a really good spot because Dr. Sandino gets to be our test pilot, and we're really grateful for that. So thank you. And there's probably a really good opportunity for some, you know, 360 feedback and process improvement as you go through this. So, you know, don't just consider yourself a receiver of information. As we do this, hopefully, you know, bring it back to us and we can all get better for it. So appreciate you being the first one and all the documents and all your hard work, Ms. Cruz. Thank you very much. This is really great. And it'll be very helpful because I think all of us share your sentiments about the board meetings and when and where and what, and you kind of just stay quiet for a while, and, you know, but you don't need to be. So, okay, thank you. And moderator, can you open this for public comment?
Absolutely. We are open for public comment on the Government and Public Affairs Committee report. If anyone would like to make a comment, they may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. You may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment and click send. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. And if there are any in-person attendees, they can wave their hand just to catch the eye of the board member in attendance. I'll go ahead and step through the physical locations first. Are there any comments in Sacramento?
No comments in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any comments in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in San Jose?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in Orlando?
No comments.
Perfect. And I do not see any requests for comment online. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think at this time we're going to take our last quick 10-minute bio break of the day, and then we'll come back and finish out our last 2 or 3 agenda items that shouldn't take us very long. So I have it as, let's call it 11:40. Let's come back at 11:50. Thank you, everyone. Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. And just before we get started again, can we just confirm a quorum? Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr.
Present.
Adams?
I'm sorry.
Present.
Raphael Sweet is present. Ms. Cruz?
Present.
Dr. Daniels?
Present.
Dr. Sandino?
Present.
Thank you. Moving to agenda item number 12, review, discussion, and possible action on legislation related to the board, the chiropractic profession, DCA, and/or other healing arts boards. And I will turn this over to our executive officer, Ms. Walker, for the update report.
Sure, thank you. So there's a total of, I believe it's 11 bills on today's agenda. The good news is that many of the bills are simply update items. Some of them didn't even move out of policy committee last week, so they're essentially dead for 2023. Just where we're at in the legislative cycle, last Friday, July 14th, was the deadline for legislation to move out of a policy committee. If it failed to move from that committee, it's essentially dead for the year. It can be revisited next year. So there's a couple of bills that we have on today's agenda that are in that status. The first of which actually will begin with Assembly Bill 765, which is the bill that the board, as you'll recall from the April meeting, it's the most concerning bill that we've seen this legislative cycle. What it would essentially do is make the use of any medical specialty title, such as internist, neurologist, radiologist, or any titles, terms, letters, words, abbreviations, description of services, designations, or insignia, alone or in combination with any other title, indicating or implying that a person is licensed to practice as such, a misdemeanor, unless that person has a valid physician and surgeon certificate. So as you'll recall from the last meeting, the board discussed a variety of issues with the bill itself. Beyond the fact that it overlaps with many chiropractic specialty titles, that was kind of the initial focus when staff looked at the bill, was thinking of chiropractic specialties and the fact that we're going to have issues there. But that discussion, as you'd recall, really went beyond that. And when you're talking about areas of healthcare, if you're talking about things like pediatrics, radiology, neurology, they're more common terms that are used to route patients to the appropriate care that they need, or if patients are seeking specific care, those are the terms that are just universally recognized so they can get the care that they need to get. The most concerning with looking at the language really comes down to the way it's crafted and then really how broad it is. I mean, the fact of including the word description of services, that's going to really open a door for challenges for the board and really kind of trying to navigate the complexity of, you're going to have that law in the Medical Practice Act, and then where does that leave us? So for purposes of today's discussion, or how we got to where we are today, and on that bill specifically, that bill it didn't make it out of the Assembly. It was held in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. We expressed our concerns with the fiscal impacts of that bill, which we had estimated to be approximately $459,000 for the first 2 fiscal years to support 2.5 analyst positions to be charged with not only educating licensees about the changes in the laws, but then also enforcing those changes with the advertising provisions, and then additional costs of $186,000 ongoing just to continue ensuring that is effective. So that was shared. The other board that had major concerns with the bill is the Naturopathic Medical Board. They shared similar concerns with the fiscal impact and also the impact to their licensees and their specialty titles. What we're looking for from the board's discussion today is, so since that bill didn't move forward, it's dead for 2023. It could potentially move forward in 2024. Staff is looking for an opposed unless amended position from the board so that we can approach the author's office and begin that discussion of what may be amenable to the bill, if anything. I mean, there are some significant concerns with the bill altogether. What staff would offer as the most minor but necessary changes to the bill would include the removal of that term description of services, and then also within the text removing, navigate to it real quick, so I have it up in front of me, removing description of services so that it's not as broad, because the intent and what we were hearing during the hearings on these bills was that the intent was around titles, but now that language is much broader than that. So removing that term, and then also removing potentially where it talks about it doesn't apply to individuals, where it says subdivision C2. This subdivision does not prevent a person holding a current and active license under another chapter of this division from using any term identified on their license, certificate, or registration, or from making any truthful statement that they specialize in a service or field that is within their license scope of practice. Staff recommends period after that, and removing the phrase, and that does not contain any of the medical specialty titles specified in paragraph 1. Because again, the problem is that it's talking about areas of healthcare, not necessarily titles, and that's where it becomes complex. From there, there's also there's larger policy issues in terms of, is this even necessary? Could it be accomplished another way? Could it be accomplished by having a stricter requirement that someone identify themselves as a doctor of chiropractic? Is this truly the solution? So that's part of the additional policy discussion that we'd like the board to have today. It does reference in the bill itself, I mean, it's referencing the American Medical Association's Truth in Advertising Survey. And when you look at that survey, it's talking about a selection of about 800 participants that were polled in various years. But the questions they were asked were more along the line of, should they be informed of their provider's credentials? It wasn't really about being confused about titles. There was some confusion over what is a physician, but it wasn't confusion over what the bill here says. So really wanted to get an additional kind of policy discussion from the board. Staff is requesting a formal opposed unless amended to address the concerns that are raised during this meeting. And we would also request that the board consider designating 1 or 2 members as subject matter experts to assist us in that communication with the author's office.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Let me open it to the board members for any further discussion, questions.
Well, I think this bill, unfortunately, is going to come back around. So, I mean, I'm of the opinion we need to be more, definitely be on it and be active. I believe in our last board meeting, there was many points brought up as far as talking points for suggestions for formal amendments. And so I'm wondering where that is. And I guess, so that's my first question. I was told that I could not oppose it without formal amendments, but we were unable to gather those that quickly. So from what I hear you saying, you have 2 very particular, well, 3, the budgets and then the 2 others that you mentioned. Was there anything from the conversation that we had at the last board meeting that helped staff with formalizing more directed amendments to the bill?
Where we need additional direction from the board is what type of scope of amendments is the board amenable to wanting to pursue? And that's also the reason behind the recommendation that the board come to that decision today and then designate 1 or 2 members to really work through the language portion of it offline, because there's different scopes. So we could go and request a very narrow amendment of just removing a few terms that are problematic. There's something in the intermediate of pursuing something where if it's focused on the chiropractic specialty titles, having some sort of carve out that the board adopt regulations to identify what those titles could be as another potential for an exemption that we could have. Or you could even go beyond, really you could raise the question of the necessity for the bill entirely, and maybe it would be more effective to mandate that licensees make some sort of affirmative statement and document in the file that they made the patient aware of their credentials, which really goes to what the kind of the intent of the cited survey is that people know what their credentials are, not that everyone be prohibited from using a term unless they are a physician and surgeon. So we need to know the scope and the magnitude of what types of amendments would be agreeable to the board, and then have a formal position so we can start working through that. And that's where the recommendation of taking a portion of that offline with a working group of board members that the board trusts to carry that out would assist staff with that effort.
So if I made a motion to oppose unless amended, to take an oppose unless amended position, and to also establish a work group to develop the language mentioned, does that cover what we need at this stage?
It would, because it's not, at this point, that bill isn't moving until we get into the beginning of the year. So that would be sufficient, and to report back on the progress, and we can at least open the door and start having those discussions of what would be appropriate and amenable to the board for this bill.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. So the idea of getting a few subject matter experts in work group is good. Okay. Any other discussion, comments from the board members? I would like to make the motion. Okay, go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say, nope, I was just going to say I support your motion and do the work in the next 6 months to be ready for what comes down.
Thank you. So I'll take that as a motion in a second.
I second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion from the board members? Hearing none. Moderator, can we please open this motion for public comment?
Certainly. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment on the motion. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send. They can raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. Our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand, and anyone in person can raise their hand to catch the eye of the board member in attendance. I'll go ahead and step through the in-person locations first while our virtual users make use of the features. Are there any comments in Sacramento?
In Sacramento.
Thank you. Any comments in Burbank?
No.
Okay. Any comments in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in San Jose?
No comments.
Thank you. Any comments in Orlando?
No public comments.
Thank you. And I do not see any requests for comments in the virtual arena either. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Dr. Perez?
You may be on mute, Mr. Sweet.
Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
Dr. Sandino.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And I would ask Ms. Walker, any thoughts on the work group or?
Yeah, to help us move this along, it'd be helpful if the board could identify the 2 members of the working group. My recommendation would be to include Dr. Paris as chair of the board, if he can make representations on behalf of the board, especially on legislation. And then if we have another member that's interested in joining this effort, we'd be happy to take a volunteer.
Well, if it works, I would volunteer.
And I would make myself available as well, depending on how many you want to have.
I would recommend keeping it to 2, just so that we can have offline discussions and meetings without triggering a meeting provision under the Bagley-Keene Act.
Correct. Gotcha. Whatever the chair determines is I'm fine with.
Well, I would love to have you both do it. I don't know, I'm having a hard time making that decision at the moment.
Dr. Paris, this is Sabina. Sorry.
Yes.
You don't have to make
Thank
the
you.
decision right now. It can be done outside of a meeting, so don't feel the pressure to do any act on anything right now. So you can always assign a task force outside of the meeting. It's your prerogative.
Okay, so I think what we can do is maybe get a better sense of the commitment too, like the workload level, and then bring that back to both of you, and we can discuss it and make a further decision later.
Sounds
But
good.
I appreciate, yeah, I appreciate the volunteerism, and thank you very much. Okay, I'll turn it back over to, or I think, are we?
You took the vote, so we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Okay.
So then, thank you for that one. I'll move on to the next bill. There's not much to share. AB 796 has to do with pretty much an effort to regulate athletic trainers in the state. As you can see with the bill itself, historically there's been similar bills trying to regulate athletic trainers. This one's actually it's gotten quite far compared to efforts we've seen in the past. It's gone through now 6 rounds of amendments, so they're still working to get that bill just right. It is still remaining in policy committee in the Senate, so we will watch for that one to see what's to come in 2024. Like I said, this is one of those bills where it's gotten the furthest, so likely going to see some sort of action next year. They got to the point of establishing it as a registration committee and then placing it underneath the Medical Board of California, which really is quite the change from when the bill was originally enacted. It was talking about establishing either an independent committee, or at one point it was putting them in the Board of Occupational Therapy. So it looks like they've really navigated that bill and found the correct home for it. They're just working out some details, and so the staff recommendation is just that we continue to watch and monitor and update the board on the progression of this bill as it would establish a new DCA program. So no further discussion on that unless there's specific questions from the board.
Yeah, Ms. Walker, so is our only concern that it's another DCA program? Like, I watched the assembly meeting on that, and I didn't really see any concerns. I mean, it seems like there's a huge need for it. I felt like they really presented their case really well. Is there anything from DCA's side that was concerning about the bill?
No, nothing that would be of concern to our board. There was an effort, so when we were looking at legislation last year, one of the suggestions that had come about, I believe it's from the Government Public Affairs Committee, was really making sure that we were keeping the board updated on not only legislation that directly affects chiropractic, but then also what else of note is going on at DCA. So that's the purpose for inclusion of this bill.
Got it. Thanks.
Along the same lines, moving on to the next bill is AB 814, Lowenthal, veterinary medicine, animal physical rehabilitation. This is another bill that didn't move out of, it did not move out of the policy committee last week, so it is on hold until next year. What this bill would do is it's really the first sense of us seeing a crossover between the two licensing boards, because what it would do is really authorize a licensed physical therapist to register themselves with the Veterinary Medical Board of California to be able to provide animal physical rehabilitation services. So seeing that crossover is unique. It's something that we're watching very closely, especially in light of, while this bill particularly is on physical rehabilitation, there's also within the Veterinary Medical Board's regulations, there's a whole regulatory structure on allowing for musculoskeletal manipulation of animals by chiropractors. So we're really watching this closely to see whether any new legislation comes up relating to chiropractors, or whether, like with this bill of physical therapy, is this model going to succeed, or is it going to remain in the regulations of VMB? So just another one that doesn't directly affect us, but this one's a little bit closer. So we're really watching it closely just to see how it progresses through the legislature. Moving on to the next bill we have is AB 883, Mathis Business Licenses, United States Department of Defense Skill Bridge Program. So this bill is making its way through. It's currently in the Senate. It has passed through Policy Committee, and it will be heard by the Appropriations Committee coming up on August 14th. The board had taken a support position on this bill. It's really, what it does is expand on the different types of expedited licensure that we have for different members of the military, and it expands to include those that are part of the United States Department of Defense Skill Bridge Program. Our estimated fiscal impact of the bill is relatively minor. It's just about $1,700 for us to do a relatively simple regulation package to include an additional question on the license application to find out if somebody's eligible for this type of expedited licensure. And the staff recommendation is just to maintain the support position. So we don't need anything from the board on this, just it's an update item unless there's any questions on this bill. Oh, and I did want to also mention that this is one of the bills that we're closely watching just due to its progression, and we are already engaging in discussions with our vendor on the Connect project on how we would incorporate this requirement into the online application. Hearing none, I'm going to continue on because, like I said, most of these are all update items. AB 996 low, this one has to do with the Department of Consumer Affairs Continuing Education Conflict of Interest Policy. This bill is the furthest along of the bills that we're discussing today. It's in Senate, currently on its third reading, so it's very close to passing. And what this bill would really do is require that any of the DCA boards that are responsible for approving continuing education providers or courses, so including this board, would have to develop and maintain a conflict of interest policy that at a minimum discourages the qualification of a CE course if the provider of that course has an economic interest in a commercial product or enterprise directly or indirectly promoted in that course. It requires conflicts to be disclosed at the beginning of each course. This bill, it's very much in line with a lot of the discussion that the Continuing Education Committee had on establishing the requirements and the approval of courses. So it's something that's just right in line with the direction that we're going. Again, very minor fiscal impact for us to develop a regulation package that would implement the bill. And it's something that we're watching closely because at the point of if it is to pass, the staff will be working with the Continuing Education Committee to have them convene and discuss the bill and especially the implementation of that bill. Moving right along, we also have under item F is AB 1028 McKinner, reporting of crimes, mandated reporters. This bill is currently in the Senate Appropriations Committee, so it's getting close to passing. It's gone through policy, and now they're assessing the fiscal impact. We've discussed this bill at the last meeting and then also at the Government Public Affairs Committee meeting. But what this one would really do is it's going to update the mandatory reporting requirements for when a practitioner suspects that someone has suffered a physical injury caused by assaultive or abusive conduct, and instead only require the report if the patient has suffered a wound or physical injury inflicted by the person's own act or inflicted by another where the injury is by means of a firearm, a wound, or physical injury resulting from child abuse or elder abuse. So previous versions of the bill didn't include this portion of it, and then it also establishes the date of January 1st, 2025. The portion of the bill that there's been some concern with from the board's perspective of just on the implementation side has to do with the requirement that a practitioner that suspects a patient has suffered physical injury caused by domestic violence to provide brief counseling, education, or other support, and a warm handoff or referral to advocacy services as specified in the bill. So that's the portion of the bill that staff's monitoring it. It is progressing, so we need to begin putting together outreach materials to our licensees if it is to pass, so that we've got resources that they can kind of navigate these new mandatory reporting requirements that are different than in the past, and then also communicate that information to our test vendor as far as the types of questions that we ask on the state exam and the law exam, because it would be impacting those mandatory reporting requirements. So nothing to do today. Staff is recommending that we continue watching it, but just as with some of the other bills that are really approaching passing this year, really getting ourselves in a position where we're ready to implement, or in this case, provide assistance to our licensees on the provisions within the bill.
One comment on this one. I remember from, I think, like a prior meeting, we meant one of the questions was if we had reached out to any of the other boards, if they, what's it called, how they handle this, right? If there is a warm handoff that exists, kind of under, and what type of list they provide, because I imagine, what's it called? It's not an isolated thing.
Yeah, this is one that's going to affect multiple boards. We do need to begin those discussions of also kind of partnering with them and how they're going to inform their licensees with the same information, and then also, like I said, reaching out directly to those advocacy services to find out what it is we can provide to support our licensees. So that'll be all part of what we'll be putting together on that bill.
Seems like really clearly defined, operationally defined warm handoff. What that, what those duties would require.
Yeah, I think it's really a matter of making licensees aware of the change and making sure that they at least have solid guidance of what to do. Depending on the interpretation, that may or may not be clear to them what it is, but I think by getting some additional resources directly from the advocacy services, I think that'll help support what that means to them.
Because the only reason I think about that is that in the hospital systems internally, a warm handoff is actually walking a patient over to somebody else, and so that, I think that's a
It's a version of, hi, have you met my friend so and so?
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but what? Yeah. Is it physical? Is it email?
Is it resources? Call this. Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Yeah, and how do you implement that if it's you're in a standalone practice where you can't necessarily walk them? What would that look like? So we'll work on getting that message out.
Great.
Ms. Walker. So I may be in the minority, but I'm not a fan of this language. It really concerns me. I mean, it seems like there's nothing to do about it, but as Dr. Paris was saying, like, what does a warm handoff mean, and what does that really mean for someone who is in private practice? Plus it says, a health practitioner is not civilly or criminally liable for any report made in good faith. I mean, that to me is just like, you get a group of people together and someone could say, oh, it was in good faith, it wasn't in good faith. I don't know if our licensees really are, equipped for this, especially with, not in California per se, but other schools not having psychology classes in their curriculum anymore. So like I said, I don't think there's anything to do about it, but I'm super concerned about it. I think it could be potentially very messy. And I know you said we would have resources for our licensees, but our licensees are already dealing with so much to then provide brief counseling, like do not have referrals. And what does a warm handoff mean? I mean, you could send somebody a document and, some say, oh, well, you didn't certify it, so that was your responsibility. Like, so you suggest it, but they don't take it, then are you liable? I don't know. I would really like to hear maybe what the other board members think, and also what the other health healing boards feel about it.
Well, I don't want to, detract at all. I completely agree with you, Dr. Daniels, and I'm concerned about the language. I think it opens itself up. I mean, with not pulling any punches here, but I think it's a huge liability litigation issue for anybody, because if it's not clearly defined and it's broad like that, you're going to be stuck with defending yourself for something you felt like you did the best you could, and it's just ripe with misinterpretation, and I just think it's poorly worded. So I mean, from a board standpoint, I think we would oppose something unless there's a lot more clarification on what this all means and really what our role is.
I'd like to comment and agree with both Dr. Daniels and Dr. Adams. Being that I worked in Spain as a chiropractor when it was being a pioneered, like, new profession there, we went through a lot of similar changes, I feel, that are in this item, way back when chiropractic colleges did not exist in Spain. And a lot of the hiccups and trouble that we didn't foresee were terminology or things not well defined. So I really, really caution on this item. So I agree with the other doctors.
What I'm hearing is, I would say two areas. The two areas of concern is around the terms of the warm handoff, right? But also good faith. Is that, at least that's what I'm hearing, because I feel like that's what the language is kind of, I would say, based in, that you are not at risk if you do this in good faith. And so I feel like, am I interpreting that correctly? Like, those are the two, like, kind of cruxes of the concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that, but it's also, the other language of providing brief counseling, education, or other support. And I'm just don't
providing support.
think that the education is there, or I don't think that's in the best interest of public protection in this category, to have our licensees be responsible for that blurred line. I don't know what the other board members think, but it's kind of where I'm at.
I think it's not our discipline. I think that's the key here, is they're asking us to be something that we're really not trained or qualified to really be doing. I mean, I make referrals to people in certain situations. I say, you really need to speak with somebody about this. I'm not qualified to render an opinion on that. And I don't want to be in a position where someone says, well, you didn't do enough, because it just, that's not why I'm there. I'm there to help them with their chiropractic issue. And then if you're saying, well, but you got to be a somewhat of a counselor, briefly, and then you've got to hand this off, it's just, in my opinion, that's putting onus where it doesn't need to be. And also opens us up that someone can interpret what we do as either we overreached. I mean, you're in a position here where you can be liable if you didn't do enough, or you be liable if you didn't, or you did what somebody thought was too much. Well, it just opens itself up, and it's really, in my opinion, a very inappropriate position to put any practitioner that's not licensed in an area of counseling in any of those types of situations to put them in. That should be referred to people that have been specifically trained in that particular area and are licensed. And, here we're talking about athletic trainers, in this area. I mean, and going really narrow for them. I mean, we're broadening us. It just is, I just think it's an ill-conceived idea.
Thank you for that. I think the question we have to answer then is it the board's desire to change our position?
Or in this
Or-
case, take one.
Take one. Okay, yeah, we don't currently. So is there a motion?
Well, my
If I
opinion
can
would be that we would oppose this unless the wording is, changed significantly.
If that's a
If I
motion,
could-
I would second it.
This is Sabina. Real quick before you finalize that motion, I know you did mention something about if it were changed. If you feel like there's too many things in this particular bill that need to be addressed, maybe the proper position is like straight oppose. Like if there's just so many, if you feel so strongly that they may not be able to fix it with just a couple amendments we could provide in a letter. Because remember, we'll have to figure out exactly what to ask them to change if we do an oppose unless amended. So just something to consider. I hear a lot of really strong feelings about this. And I believe I think I saw in the analysis on one of these that a DA's office, I think San Diego's even opposed this bill as well. But I don't think there's a list yet out for opposition. Kristen, I'm not sure if you, but I haven't.
There's, as of the most recent, actually, I apologize, I was looking at the wrong list. Let me pull the list very quickly. I did want to just get a little clarification because what I'm hearing the most of the concern being around providing the brief counseling and the warm handoff and that portion of it. There's the discussion of good faith, which I would, after I make my comment, kind of like to hear Sabina's perspective on how that would potentially be applied. When you talk about good faith, what does that look like in reality? But if I could offer maybe a potential amendment could be something to the effect of just that, rather than that list of providing the counseling or other support and the handoff and referral, skip straight potentially to a referral, that when you suspect that this has occurred, that you provide a referral to appropriate advocacy services. Would that be something that potentially would kind of eliminate at least some of those concerns around the language of the bill, or would that still be flawed even with that amendment?
I like that. I'm supportive of the identification and addressing it via a referral. The vagary in the multiple, channels that you'd have to engage in to satisfy this is very convoluted. So, yeah, I would be supportive of, language that required a referral.
And then to provide some context also on the known, there's quite a bit of opposition coming from police officers associations and district attorneys. We also have the Board of Registered Nursing in opposition. So you could entertain an opposition just outright, or an oppose unless amended if you were to offer something to the effect of implementing, that referral requirement.
My thought is I'd like to see them go back to the drawing board, really. I think and then rather than have us try and craft language around their flawed language and, I feel like we're square peg and round hole this. So I'd be supportive of, I would entertain a motion to maintain a opposition position, to take an opposition position.
Don't we currently already have a motion on the floor for oppose unless amended?
I'll retract my my motion and just go to a straight outright, motion to oppose. I think there's too much to unpackage here. I think I'm in agreement. This needs to go back to the drawing board, and it's not our job to rectify their flawed language. So my feeling is I move that we outright oppose this bill.
Second the motion.
Thank you. This is Sabina again. I wanted to agree with your change in that I understand the referral. You could probably pretty easily provide some guidance or some recommendations. However, it sounded like a lot of you had some other concerns beyond that. And I was afraid if you did the oppose unless amended and they amended just that one portion, it would your position letter would turn directly into support. So I think hearing all the concerns, that's a good call to just straight oppose. And that will also give your staff some opportunity to work with the author's office as well.
And this is the moderator, and it looks like the El Dorado room is on mute.
If you're speaking, I can't hear anybody. FYI.
How's that?
There you go. Thank
That
you
better?
very much.
There you go.
Okay, sorry, we lost the whole room here for a brief minute. So let me go back. Let me reset us back at before we went up. Dr. Adams had retracted his motion and made a motion to oppose. And we needed a second.
And Dr. Sandino seconded it.
Okay, thank you. So motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by the board? Hearing none. Moderator, can we please open this for public comment?
Certainly. If anyone has any comments about the motion, you may look for the hand raise icon, which is the little icon of a hand. You can click that, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And of course, if you are present in person, you may just catch the eye of the board member in attendance. And I'll go through the locations just in case we have in-person comments. In Sacramento, are there any requests for comment?
No requests for comment.
Thank you. In Burbank, any requests?
No.
Thank you. In Sonoma, any requests?
No.
Thank you. In San Jose, any requests?
No requests.
Thank you. In Orlando, any requests?
No request.
Perfect. And then I do not see any requests for comment on the WebEx connection as well. Shall I close that public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Sure. Dr. Paris?
Yes.
Dr. Adams?
Sorry. Yes.
Raphael Sweet? Yes. Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels?
Yes.
And Dr. Sandino?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Motion passes. And I will turn it back over to Ms. Walker.
Sure, thank you. So the next bill that we have is AB 1707. That's Health Professionals and Facilities Adverse Actions Based on Another State's Law. This bill has passed the Senate Policy Committee, and it's now pending a hearing by the Senate Appropriations Committee on August 14th. Staff has reviewed this bill. There's no fiscal impact on the board. This one, under some circumstances, could potentially affect our licensees, but really what this bill does is prohibits any of the DCA Healing Arts boards from either denying an application for licensure or imposing discipline upon a licensee on the basis of a civil judgment, criminal conviction, or disciplinary action in another state that's based on a law that would interfere with a person's right to receive sensitive services that would be lawful in this state. with this bill, it's kind of in line with our discussion earlier today about the discipline in another state and the circumstances on which we would actually act. And then we moved forward with that language where we put the parameters of for an act or conduct that's substantially related to the practice in California. We kind of view this bill as being very similar because it prohibits you from being able to just discipline somebody on the fact that something occurred in another state that would be legally allowed here. And it's really, the bill itself is surrounded by reproductive health rights and being able to ensure that, you know, if a provider in this state provides it to someone either coming from another state or, you know, in another state, that they're not going to be punished here in California for that act. Staff has a recommendation that we continue to watch the bill. The board's welcome to take a position on it if they so choose. There are some of the other healing arts boards have taken positions on it, specifically, you know, CMA has supported the bill, the medical board, the osteopathic medical board, and the physician assistant board have supported the bill. There's no known opposition to the bill. So either way, it's just something that we're tracking. There's not much in the way of implementation because, like I said, we evaluate every type of action taken against a licensee using similar criteria. So just if there's any questions or discussion from the board on that bill, happy to answer any questions. Not hearing any, so I will move right along with the next bill. So the next bill is SB 372, which is Menjivar. That has to do with DCA licensee and registrant records and name and gender changes. So this bill has been amended a few times. The Department of Consumer Affairs actually provided some technical assistance to the author of the bill, and that's how we got to the current version that we have. What this bill would do is require that it would require that upon the board's receipt of information that someone has updated their name or gender, we would have to update that licensee's license and replace any references to their former name or gender to their current one, and then treat that information they provided to us as confidential. It would require that if the person had a former discipline under a prior name, that you can't make a reference to that on the DCA search, our public license information website, and instead it would have to include a statement telling them to contact the board for additional information. So there would still be a notification there, but just they wouldn't have readily, the documents itself wouldn't be readily accessible. Another technical change that was made to the bill upon the advice of DCA was narrowing the scope of when this provision would apply, and it would be for basically name changes as a result of either a gender change or circumstances involving public safety, like a domestic violence type situation where somebody changes their name and they need privacy. So they really narrowed the bill to eliminate loopholes to where just by changing your name you can wipe away your enforcement history and someone can't locate you. So that's some of the improvements that they've made to the bill. They also clarified some of the language on as far as making requests for information to be more in line with the Public Records Act, and that by doing that, they eliminated our fiscal impact of the bill because we don't need to, we're not seeing the need to update any regulations on this. We would just follow the guidance that's issued by the department if the bill were to pass. So this one, I believe it moved forward. Apologize, there's too many bills on the agenda today. Let me double check this bill. Yeah, this bill's passed and it's with the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So at this point, it's gone through the policy discussion. It's now just the discussion on cost. So if there's any questions on this bill, we'd be happy to answer it. We're putting ourselves in a position of just like with the bill on the SkillBridge program for military veterans. We've been already discussing with the IT folks how we would go about implementing the bill itself and what that would do in Connect, particularly because in Connect we offer a name change application. So we're working on the implementation if it were to pass, but happy to answer any questions about the bill if there's any from the board. I have no questions. Okay, good. Yeah, like I said, I think by DCA offering their technical assistance on the bill, I think it really eliminated a lot of the concerns that were raised when we first looked at the bill in April. Moving on to the next bill, SB 447, Atkins, GoBiz bill. For the most part, this bill doesn't affect the board. The key provision in that bill that would be beneficial and would help the board is it would basically repeal the state-funded and state-sponsored travel to states with discriminatory laws on the books. At the time that we prepared the meeting materials, there was currently 23 states on that list. As of Friday, it's actually now 26. So what this bill would do is eliminate that, it would repeal that requirement. And in effect, what that does for BCE is it would really allow for increased participation at FCLB national events and regional events, because, you know, looking at this current fiscal year, we cannot attend our district meeting because it's in one of those states, and we can't attend the national meeting. We were luckily able to work with FCLB to secure a spot at a different district meeting in Massachusetts, because that's not one of the states on the list. But that's the reason for bringing this bill forward. No recommendation that you take a position, just that we watch, and if it does pass, that we take the necessary steps to hopefully secure approval so we can attend the FCLB national meeting in 2024. The next bill on the list is SB 544, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act teleconferencing bill. This is one bill where there are now concerns from staff that, based on the last round of review of amendments. So this bill was just very recently amended to do two things. The most important of what the bill is going to do is, so at the, let me take a step back. At the Government Organization Policy Committee discussion, there were quite a bit of concerns raised about the remote meetings and the need to return to in-person meetings for state bodies, and, you know, providing the accessibility that we currently have today, where someone could appear and go in person. So they have put forward some amendments to the bill. The problematic one for staff is that it would amend the bill to require that a majority of the members or a quorum of the state body be present at one physical location, a minimum of 50% of the meetings of the state body each year. When we discussed like the meetings that we've had in the last year, we've had 24 meetings. And what that requirement of having them be 50% in person at a single location would do in effect is it changes our fiscal impact from being a savings of $10,000 a year to going the opposite direction and potentially costing us $60,000 additional per year for us to comply with that requirement. What that would essentially in effect do for us is it would make it difficult for us to conduct the frequency of meetings that we do. We would have to do longer, less frequent committee meetings, which we really found over the last year that the quick sprint meetings of 2 hours, one, two, three topics, and moving through, it's really going to slow down our momentum. So with that in mind, the staff recommendation, the board had previously taken a support position on a previous version of the bill. Staff's recommendation, and I also want to clarify that the department's aware of the concerns that the boards have, and they are trying to work with the author's office on some amendments that would be that would work for the DCA programs. Staff's recommendation here today is that the board consider taking a position of support, if amended, to address the concern about the 50% in-person requirement for the teleconference meeting. And then largely defer to the Department of Consumer Affairs to take the lead on working with the author's office to get the technical language correct, but then we would be furthering with support behind the department on doing that.
So, quick question, with what you're saying, is that going to do away with that we would be able to do the majority of the committee meetings via teleconference, but not all of them? Because it seems to me that we're way more efficient when we're doing the teleconference committee meetings, where we can do those, 2-hour meetings more frequently. We're getting a lot more accomplished. Is that going to detract from that, or are we still going to be able to do that?
That's the direction that we want to get the bill back into. So the original version of the bill would have allowed for the remote teleconference type meetings or video conference through WebEx and you only had to provide one physical location where the public can attend, and that physical location would no longer require that a board member be present. It would just be either a board member or staff. So in effect, when we're conducting remote meetings, the members of the body could participate remotely, and then staff could, create a public location, kind of like what we're doing right here today within our state building, where if anybody wanted to appear in person, they could do so. We would have the equipment. But what they expressed some concerns, particularly around teleconferencing, especially if there's no use of video. And then they expressed concerns about the public not potentially being able to go in person to locations directly with the members. And then that resulted in that very recent amendment of adding the 50% requirement. So no more than 50% of the meetings can be held under that type of provision. So that's problematic. And the reason it's so problematic is that it extends down to our committee meetings. If it was simply the board meetings, you had to do 50% in person, it wouldn't be a problem. But when you start getting into committee meetings where we're conducting 4 times as many, that's where really the problem and the expense is going to lie.
Gotcha. Well, then I suggest we make a motion to support with an amendment. Or support if it's amended.
I second.
Do I need to specify that, Sabina, that support if amended, that it's less than 50%?
Correct. If that's the only amendment you would like to suggest, yes, that would be very nice to have in the motion. And that way your staff has a little bit more direction. They can probably draft that letter without the assistance of a board member as well.
Is that what you're looking for, Miss Walker? Less than 50%?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so that we can support the department's efforts.
Then I motion that we support with the amendment of the requirement being less than 50% in person.
I second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Is there any discussion or questions by the board? Hearing no further questions or discussion, moderator, can we please open this motion for public comment?
Certainly. And we've opened up the public comment feature of WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion, you can either raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. You can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And if there are in-person attendees, they can raise their hand and catch the eye of the board member in attendance. I'll go ahead and skim through the physical locations first to give our virtual users time to access those features. Are there any public comments in Sacramento?
No public comments in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any public comments in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any public comments in Sonoma?
Oh.
Thank you. Any public comments in San Jose?
No comments.
Thank you. Any public comments in Orlando?
No public comments.
Thank you. We do have one request virtually, so call-in user 3. I'm going to send your request unmute, and you'll use *6 to unmute, and you will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. And you're unmuted.
Hello, Falcon here. Although I do agree with the notion to have less requirement to attend the teleconferencing requirement attendance thing, judging from the productivity that has been made, like with the licensing committee in particular, like perhaps this bill is just a gesture to keep accountability checks, because maybe that Maybe it is because people aren't meeting in person that there is no accountability set on productivity parameters. However, it does save money, but at the same time, if less conferencing meets is agreed upon, it must also be respected with products being delivered with those less meetings. Or I'm sorry, with the less in-person meetings.
Thank you. And I do not see any other requests for public comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. And thank you again
Thank you.
for your comments. Okay. Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
Yes. Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
and Dr. Sandino.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
And last but not least, we have SB 802, a Ross bill around disqualification from licensure based on criminal conviction. This bill did not move forward this year. It's in the assembly, but it didn't pass through the Business and Professions Committee. This bill we've been watching primarily because it appears to be it is a spot bill because the text itself would just simply add a 30-day notification requirement to making the notification that a license is denied. The fact that it's being held even further solidifies that we're watching a spot bill. So we're gonna continue monitoring it to see what version it presents itself in 2024, but no action from the board at this time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Walker, for the update report. Are there any further questions or discussion on any of that legislation? Okay. Hearing none. Let's move to agenda item 13, future agenda items. And I'll just open it up to the board for any future agenda items.
Yeah, this could be for enforcement, and it might already be in discussion. I was just wondering about a conversation about revoked licensees working in chiropractic offices. It's been brought up before, and I don't know where we are with that, and if there should be more conversation, especially in regards to public safety, of why their license was revoked, being misleading, working in an office, or being in contact with patients. So I would like to add that, or that might be redirected to a subcommittee.
We have, just to answer you, we have had that addressed, and as we brought up in previous enforcement committee meetings, one of the challenges is that once their license is revoked, our jurisdiction to the revoked licensee terminates. And so our efforts are being focused more at the licensees who then might be inclined to hire somebody with a revoked license. So that's where we're putting our emphasis, because our reach kind of goes away. And I'll defer to Ms. Walker if there's anything that I mischaracterized with that comment.
No, that's correct. I would add though that topic is being actively discussed as part of the proposal around the supervision of unlicensed individuals within a practice. We're going to define that a little bit further, so that will be moving up to the board, having been considered by the enforcement committee. But thank you for reiterating the concern about that issue.
Thank you.
Any other future agenda items from the board members?
I'd like to see, I think Dr. Daniels brought this up about in the communications on the top of the presentations, kind of also going to licensees as well. And I think just in general, when it comes to the communication plan, if it could include at the committee level, kind of the different kind of respective topics that connect to that, to see kind of either kind of what's going on, so that it's not just the governance committee, but each committee sees what's going to their respective audiences. So like with CE, for example, as well. Great.
Thank you. It's a good suggestion. Thank you. Any other future agenda items? Okay, hearing none, moderator, can we open this agenda item for public comment?
Certainly. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a brief suggestion of a future agenda item, you may look for the hand icon, click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment and click send. Or you may, if you're a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. And of course, if you are in person, you can raise your hand and catch the eye of the board member in attendance. So we'll go ahead and, as before, check through the physical locations first. Are there any requests for comment in Sacramento?
No public comments in Sacramento.
Thank you. Any comments in Burbank?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in Sonoma?
No.
Thank you. Any comments in San Jose?
No comments.
Thank you. Any comments in Orlando?
No public comments.
Perfect. And we have one request for comment from call-in user 3. Again, you will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone, and you can use *6 to unmute. And you're unmuted.
This is Falcon again. Thank you for this meeting and this platform. If draft language for the rule edit for the partial point for the clinic execution for detection of supplication and no adjustment, if a vote could be made for that, or a deadline could be made for that, that'd be appreciated. If it could be separated a la carte from the Chiropractic Initiative Act revision, that would be appreciated. I'm certain that the legal counsel can't answer with a yes or no about, separate or multiple items in the rules of regulations. And to be grouped with so many other items, not a la carte, would lead to unnecessary delay. I'm a student, an intern at the Chiropractic College Clinic. Interns deserve a public option for practice instead of only a private option for practice. And the patients should also, at that level, benefit from not only the private option, but also the public option. And I refuse to be forced to adjust someone if measures indicate that they don't need an adjustment. I hope that, produces the sense of urgency to prioritize this matter to be dealt with sooner rather than later, as my time in the clinic is finite and not infinite, and I will not adjust a patient if measures say that they don't need one. And I will stay true with that order. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I do not see any other requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank
And
you.
thank you once again for your further comments. Agenda item 14 is closed sessions. We have no items for closed session today, so we can proceed to agenda item 15. And I'm going to take a step, and this is highly controversial, but I'm actually going to call for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you also. And thank you all again. Appreciate everybody's hard work, staff, board, and thank you to the public for attending the meeting and all your comments and suggestions today. Much appreciated. I will adjourn the meeting at 1:01 p.m.
Do we need to vote on that motion? Or are we
Yeah,
okay?
this is Sabina. You don't.
Oh, we didn't vote on it. No, yes, we do.
Take back that gavel.
Mr. Sweet, would you please call the roll for the vote on the motion?
And for the future,
Darn.
you don't need a motion to adjourn, just for the future, but you can absolutely do it today.
Thank you. It's a personal preference.
Can we do it by acclamation?
All right, I'll call for the
Mr.
vote.
Sweet.
So, Dr. Paris,
Yes.
Dr. Adams,
Yes.
Raphael Sweet, yes. Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Dr. Daniels,
Yes.
and Dr. Sandino.
Thought about it. Hesitation. Motion unanimously passes. Thank you again, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you at our next meeting.
You
Bye
too.
now.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We set it up, and then I blew it.